Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. It is Monday, and you know what Mondays mean. I'm glad that I have with me my very good brother, Tom.
What's up, guys?
What's going on, brother? How you doing?
Happy Monday. Good to be back.
I sort of started missing you the rest of the week.
Oh, that's cute.
We're starting off a conversation about his Christianity too feminine.
I miss you too.
So, folks, hit the like button. Please do that. Share this out. We're going to have a really, really good conversation. I'm assuming we're going to have a really good conversation because of just the individual sitting here. I think we're going to have a blast. We're going to be truthful. We're going to be balanced. We're going to say it like it is. Are we going to pull punches?
No.
When have we ever
pulling punches?
When have we ever been known to pull punches?
Not on this channel.
Yeah, definitely not. If you guys are observing anything that could be fixed up in regards to audio and video, we've been changing stuff around. So
it looks great. I'm monitoring it here. It looks amazing.
Yeah, I was just trying to see if your audio's coming through us. You might want to move in a little closer to your mic, but I don't know yet. We'll see.
All right.
So, we're about to, we are definitely by next week, we're going to have a table for you. And hopefully we'll have a bookshelf behind you.
Yes.
The only reason we don't have the bookshelf behind you is because Target has run out of that specific color of the bookshelves that I have.
Target.
They have a white one and they have a black one. We might end up just getting the black one. I don't know, but hopefully
I don't know. I'm kind of starting to like my background here, to be honest with you.
No, that's going. That's going. Big shout out to Jaden. Jaden gives us a $4.99 super chat. It says, "Thanks for putting God first, my brother. Keep up the good work." Thank you, Jaden. I really appreciate that, man. God bless you as well. Caleb's in the house. How you doing, Caleb? We got our very own, the Reverend Nick Quint, who's a mod on the channel, telling people,
what up,
look,
Nick?
like the video, share it around. And then he says, why Tom get a mini ATM in front of him?
Mini ATM? Is that like my phone?
He's preparing to give his tithes and offerings. A pastor would think that, wouldn't he?
This is nice.
The video setup gets better every week. I like hearing that.
Boom.
That's because I got Tom in office now, and he's got an eye for these things. Look, I got a brain for certain things, and I might not have an eye for certain other things. This is partly why my wife buys all my clothing, because if I were to clothe myself, probably wouldn't be very pleasant to the eye. So I like having good friends that are around. Yeah, so we mess with the lighting today, and it looks good, man.
Yeah.
And Leonard is the way I'm going to read this. Leonard says, Christian worship music could use more masculine voices. Why did you talk to this, Tom? Because you're a worship leader.
That's something we didn't discuss last week. You should watch, Leonard, last week's video where we talked about worship. We didn't talk about that specifically. But yeah, man, I mean, you look at like Billy Graham in the past, his worship leader is very manly, stood behind the pulpit. There wasn't this sort of feminized thing. Wow, this is coming all together last week in this week's video. It was very deep voices. Oh, Lord, my God. Stuff like that.
Yeah. So I'm curious to know, like, there's an aspect of worship music that has to do with the manly voices, like just a guy's voice, but also the lyrics, and what we're communicating. Both, like, it's got to be biblical.
That's right.
But also, like, a heavy emphasis towards one side or the other, like more of a balanced worship when it comes to our relationship with God. But do you have issues with worship lyrics? I mean, I have issues with worship lyrics.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we discussed this last week. What are some of the issues you have? I'm curious. With worship lyrics, specifically.
I think quite a bit of worship music is feelings oriented. So if we're worshiping God, in my mind, right? So there are different kinds of worship. So I'm thinking specifically here when it comes to praise. Okay, there is room to call on God, thanksgiving, praise, right? Like we see this in the Psalms. There's multiple kinds of Psalms. And I'm in need of you, you're precious to me, you're beautiful. That's the sort of stuff I'm talking about that I tend to have issues with.
Do you have a hard time worshiping God when words like that are used?
Do I have a hard time worshiping? No. But if it's too much, then I'm bothered by it. Because at times I feel like it's not for me. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Like when I praise God, I want to proclaim who He is.
That's right.
So I mean, I don't know. I don't script my prayers. When at church, for example, when I do the opening prayers, I don't script them. I just get up there and pray. I don't know if you remember my prayer from yesterday.
Yeah, I do.
Like that's the sort of stuff. It sounds like a psalm, and I don't really script it. It just comes from me. It comes from my heart. It comes from my knowledge of Scripture. Like I think at one point I said something like, we're here for you, Jesus, the one for whom the universe exists, and through whom and for whom all things have been made.
That's right.
Like that to me is worship. That to me is praise. And it's important that we focus on that issue, or else we're lost. It becomes demographically only towards certain people. That's what I have a problem with. So I have no issue, because I think Scripture does this, like the beauty of God, right? So I think that's okay to do, because there is an aspect of that.
That's right. So you're talking about generally like more feminized music, where it's like, this is my desire for you to speak to my heart, and, touchy-feely, Jesus is my boyfriend kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get it. It's hard. As a worship leader, it's hard because you want to, you want people to have some of those feelings. You want people to feel loved and comforted, especially when, people are coming to church with a lot of, it's hard because people come to church with different backgrounds and their weeks look completely different. Like I can tell you're very good at this too, Arthur, where you look at someone's face and you're able to tell how they're feeling, their emotions. So it's hard to kind of balance that, where somebody could have had a terrible week, lost someone in the family, and those more comforting songs make more sense. And then someone's, had a like a low week, maybe they feel disrespected or something like that generally in their week, and they want to come and hear some more pump up battle hymn of the Republic kind of music.
Yeah, like so here's the thing is that I don't think worship generally ought to be reliant on how my week was.
Yeah.
For the same reason why I don't think every sermon given should be reliant on how my week was or could have been, or what the pastor should be targeting that too. That's partly why I like expositional preaching.
Yeah.
Is that you just teach the text of the Bible. You draw your application from the text properly, where people can actually use it in their lives. Or else it's all over the place. And so you don't get a very balanced view, because you're always going to have individuals in the congregation who have been going through various things. Someone loses a job, someone gets a job.
That's right.
Right. And so like if we were to customize our worship music, our preaching to how people are doing, it's like, what do you do? You praise God and your Thanksgiving stuff when it comes to the individual who got the job or whatever like that, and then the individual who lost it. It's like you still want to praise God. The Lord gives and the Lord takes away, for example.
Yeah, I guess that's part of the problem, where not all music is worship and praise.
That's right.
Some of them are like contemplative and I'm going through stuff. Lord, you seem so far away. Things of that sort, where they could be categorized as maybe non-worship, but sometimes I feel like they're very helpful for the congregation. Yeah. For example, when I remember when we were having the Armenian genocide. I forgot what it was, but we did an Armenian genocide event, and the songs were kind of chosen more to be in that context of suffering and pain. And some of those don't sound too much like worship music, but it helps people.
Well, there's like funeral dirges in the Bible. That's the
Yeah.
thing. Like that's a genre in the Psalms. They're a dirge, right? Like so there's like all sorts of stuff. We'll pull this up at one point or another today, and look at the various kinds of Psalms we have. I think that'd be beneficial towards developing this. Hey, Yandel, thank you very much again, brother, for your continuous support for the work that we're doing. So God bless you. And I was going to wear my hat, but I left it in my room. I will. This week, I'm going to wear the hat.
Peace and blessings.
So God
Amen.
bless you.
Have you seen that video where that atheist lady's asking questions about like why Jesus did this? And she's like, he greeted people with peace be with you, which is a Islamic greeting. Have you seen that video?
Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
No,
like,
I mean,
okay.
you liked it with Apologia Center, so yeah, never mind. And then the response was, yeah, he's a Jew. And it's
Shalom.
yeah, it's the same thing. And the reason it's not the Arabic context is because Jesus didn't speak Arabic. That was the response.
And Muslims didn't exist.
Yeah, that's right.
Like even the like Badev
Mhm.
is a variation of Odev.
Yeah.
Right? Like Body Luis is literally good
Light.
Good
light.
Good morning. Right. It's the morning. We get it. It's just these are all fallacies, by the way. Like people when they come at the arguments like that, they're so fallacious, man. It's really sad. Jesus was a Muslim is, plenty of people have responded to that. And I think it's hilarious when people say that. Right. Jesus was a Muslim. ChatGPT told me so. So here's what we're going to do today. This is the way that this is going to run. I'm actually going to like hand over the reins of leading this conversation to Tom. I'm going to be second chair, I guess, today. So we're gonna hand it over. Tom's gonna lead the conversation about whether Christianity is too feminine, right? And I know we're gonna try to hopefully give some kind of a balance to this. It is important, I think, that we think biblically on all matters, especially on this matter. And here are some dangers here, guys. Before I kick it over to him. That we go, Christianity is too feminine, and then we go to the opposite side, and then whatever we define as masculinity is actually toxic masculinity, like in the realest sense. Where my desire and our desire here is that people just replicate the person of Jesus.
That's right.
Because that's what we're being conformed to the image and likeness of Jesus. So everybody, thank you for being here. Hit the like button. We got 27 people here. We only have 19 likes. Let's hit the like button. Let's pump that up because it helps with being noticed and all that stuff. And then lead it away, Tom. Go for it.
Yeah, so guys, you're going to see me looking kind of down at my device here. It's going to get better in the weeks to come as I have a laptop. So excuse me, I'm monitoring the live and kind of looking at my notes here. But yeah, I guess what we wanted to discuss today is it seems like from conversations with people and the general just the way the church feels at the moment. I mean, just wake up any morning, decide to go to one of your local churches. It seems like Christianity is catered more towards women these days. Whether it's the preaching, whether it's, as we discussed, the type of worship music, whether it's the social things that Christians get involved in, it seems like it's catered more towards, I wouldn't say women alone, but more of the feminine side of Christianity, which, as we're going to discuss, is not necessarily bad, but it needs to have a balance, just as Jesus was balanced. So I guess I want to ask you some questions, and I'll throw these at you, and you can go on, and I know you can do that very well. So I wanted to first go through, I saw a comment that said Eastern Orthodoxy is masculine or something like that. Can I respond to that real quick before I throw it at you?
Go for it.
I don't think so, man. I think it's just, it's a cultural thing. Like I'm an Armenian ethnically, but I'm Protestant, and I'm evangelical, but I'm not feminine in my worship of God. Yeah, if I go to Armenia, or if you're pointing at, like, say, Armenians or other groups of Orthodox, and you're like, yeah, they seem really masculine. That's also because of their culture. Evangelicals that are culturally Middle Eastern, Armenian, whatever, Eastern European, will tend to be less feminine. So I don't think you can directly, like, correlate those two. Where if you're a Protestant, if you're an evangelical Christian, you're automatically, like, more feminine. I don't see that. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Definitely. There's another aspect of it that structurally, like organizationally, only men serve in the church when it comes to Eastern Orthodoxy. So, like, when you walk into a church, you're not going to see women involved, as far as I know, at all. The other thing is, I think, when we say feminine, what are we really talking about? Right. This is one of the concerns that's come up. Are we talking about, like, are we equating feminine with emotional? And it seems to be that, definitely. But I think it's that plus some other layer.
Yeah.
Right. And that other layer could be mannerisms, for example. The way you speak, not just emotional sort of things. But the way you act, the way you dress, the way you speak, like these things could be that. And it could be definitely problematic. In regards to, like, Eastern Orthodoxy is more masculine, I'm just looking at it and I'm like, that's Greek culture. Yeah, I agree with you. Like, it's Armenian culture. It's whatever, Middle Eastern culture.
But I mean, also, like, they dress up. Come on, like, that's not overly masculine. Like, they dress up. Their priests and stuff dress up.
Oh, like robes and stuff.
Yeah,
like that.
I mean,
yeah.
Like, you think that's masculine? Like, when I view it, I see, this is what I mean. But there's so many cultural stuff. Like, when I enter a church and a priest is dressed up and stuff like that, I see that kind of like, that's kind of a. You guys have a wardrobe room in the back, you know what I mean? Like, it's weird to me. So I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is I wouldn't necessarily correlate everything. Well, Eastern Orthodoxy is definitely more masculine than this. I think it matters. Yeah, if you have those pastors that are like, Father God, I just want to just say how special and just how loving you are. And Lord, can you just let us just be in this moment? Yeah, that's very feminine. But that's not how all evangelical Protestant churches talk. It's just not true. Is John MacArthur feminine? I don't know.
No, doesn't seem like it to me.
But anyways, I wanted to ask you some questions. Do you see instances in the Bible, especially in the life of Jesus, or you can go to the Old Testament as well, where you see these masculine traits within these stories or these narratives, and where you feel like those should be examples of how we should behave as modern day Christians, but we're currently not? Do you have any examples at the top of your head, or do you want me to bring a couple in where we can discuss?
No, so one of the things that I would put into maybe a masculine trait category, again, these are interchangeable. Like, women can be like this as well.
Yeah, of course.
So for me, is like the straightforwardness of Jesus. He just says it like it is, right? And so that allows for, in certain instances and cases, you rebuke an individual, and in other cases, you are compassionate and accepting, depending on the context, because you're well grounded and all that. So that's one of the things that comes to my mind immediately. So if you want to throw stuff,
so I have John chapter 2. Verses 13 through 17, where Jesus is cleansing the temple. And in my notes here, says Jesus didn't sit back and stay quiet in the face of corruption. He physically drove out. So here's the thing. I guess this is the question I want to throw at you. You're right. Some of these can be interchangeable. There can be masculine and feminine traits that women and men both have. But I don't see, especially in that context, a female walking into the temple and starting to overturn tables and stuff like that. That seems like a genuinely masculine trait, and that seems like an example Jesus set. Maybe not for us to walk into random churches or people we think are teaching heretical stuff and like flip their roller coasters and stuff over. But it's definitely an example where Jesus is maybe like I would say aggression
Yeah.
at that moment was visibly shown in that way. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think there is an aspect of that. So modern sentiments always, you say these things and I'm always backtracking and thinking how people might misunderstand me because I'm an overthinker, and that could happen. So I'll just say stuff, and then if we need to correct it, we will. Let me put it in every way I can possibly think. Suppose you and I are going somewhere, and there's a group of people sitting, and in the group there are 3 guys and 2 girls. And somebody says something towards these individuals. Me and you are observing this happening, right? Some guy is passing by, and he says something to this group of individuals. If I notice the guys kind of sit there and not react, and the women are the ones that are like getting all animated and trying to defend themselves, I would say that those women are portraying masculine character and those men are not. And the way I define that is that they are not stepping up to be protectors of their surrounding.
That's right.
And I think generally if I see that happening, right. So if it's women defending themselves, doesn't matter against other women and men. I mean, that's obviously fine. But if there are guys there that, in my mind, should be doing it and aren't doing it, I think that's problematic. Part of it is because I think it's putting yourself in between people, like maybe in the place of danger, to protect those, say, behind you.
That's right.
There's a reason, there are multiple reasons where most societies, I would say almost all societies, men have been the one traditionally to go to war and fight. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And that's not because I believe women can't fight. That's not why I believe that. I just think it's the correct place of men to protect individuals around them.
Yeah.
So even if, like, I'd probably put myself in a place like that, even if I knew that the woman there was stronger than I am. Like, it doesn't really have to do with like how strong, how weak. Like, it's not that category. It's a place of responsibility in my mind.
Yeah.
Right. So again, guys, we can nuance this stuff, and I think we should. Maybe we're overgeneralizing on some of the conversations. Maybe there isn't. Maybe we are equivocating to a certain extent with like emotional and feminine. But I think men ought to be emotional as well. Yeah. Right. And I think if a man is too emotional, he's got to bring it back. If he's not emotional at all, he needs to become more emotional. And I'd say the same thing about women.
No, but I think some of these things ring true even today, right? Like the example you gave, even in today's modern society where, yes, there are more women out there working, there are more women in the political, space and things of that sort. It's still pretty much policy in departments and stuff like that where if there's a fire, you take the women and children out. If there's a disaster, you give the women and children aid. There seems to be this aspect of that courage that even in today's society is not necessarily frowned upon. Like when you see a firefighter going into a house and picking up a woman and bringing him out, bringing her out of her burning house. People aren't like, oh my gosh, like what a ridiculous thing, what a ridiculous picture. It should be the other way around. Like it seems like even in today's society that makes sense. And so I feel like what Jesus does in that situation is an act of courage, and that act of courage is still shown like these days. And I feel like maybe sometimes we're missing that in the church.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the case. It's a responsibility issue. And I think if we all did what we were responsible to, things would be good.
Are there any comments and stuff you want to discuss? I see a bunch of stuff coming in.
You can throw them out there, and then I'll let you manage that.
Okay, why you're laughing? I want to know why you're laughing. Who appointed or ordained you to teach, Arthur? Yourself? Who is your authority?
So this is Full Armor Apologetics. His name is Vartan. Vartan is an Armenian apostolic, and we went back and forth. He put up a comment on Instagram. So let me address him. I was not going to address him, but you brought me into this.
By the way, I didn't even realize. I just read a random comment that
That's
came
okay.
up.
So I'm put it this way. So Vartan essentially put up a video about Zionism, some kind of thing about Zionism, and then tagged our church in it. And so I've interacted with Vartan before. As a matter of fact, there's an interview with me on his channel. And so we've been pretty cordial. So I messaged him and I said, "Hey brother, like, why'd you tag our church in this?" And he kind of just went off on Armenian evangelicals, as though no Armenian should be an evangelical. No, Vartan, I'm not going to let you come up. So we went back and forth, and he kept asking me what my authority is, and he's going with the apostolic succession kind of bit, and I didn't respond to him. I've ignored him and haven't responded to him, and he kept asking the question, called me all sorts of names. I mean, I have all the screenshots, by the way. And, calling someone a coward and whatever else comes to your mind, a bunch of stuff in Armenian. And thinking that an individual would be willing to actually have a conversation with you is, I think, like the lamest way you can go about doing something. So, yeah, I'll just address that. I'm just going to ignore him because I don't agree with him on apostolic succession, and he doesn't think I should be an elder because no one appointed me because they don't have a trail of apostolic succession. So he's assuming his worldview in order to show me that my way of doing things is wrong. And yeah, I'm just going to leave it there.
Maybe.
And he blocked me, by the way. He blocked me on Instagram.
Maybe he thinks us evangelicals are just very feminine and he can speak to us however he wants.
Yeah, maybe so.
That's not the case, brother. Full Armor Apologetics. We run a tight ship here.
Yeah.
So
Vartan, you can do whatever you want, man. But if you're going to be consistent, take down all the interviews you have with any Protestant on your channel, because you use Protestant scholarship and then bash Protestants in the process.
Yeah.
Armenians should not be Protestant. Period. Thank you. Said which church father and which Bible.
Easy on the caffeine, man.
Yeah, don't type in all caps, bro. Relax.
Yeah. Keyboard warriors out here. Anyways, we got your back, even in the online space, Arthur. So
yeah, just whatever, bro.
There's always going to be these kind of people.
It's okay.
But anyways, some other examples. I feel like a story we can relate to is, it's funny. I think you have really good commentary on this. The story of David and Goliath is something I wrote down here. This is kind of one of those stories that are taught to Sunday school kids, and then it just seems to like phase out as you get older. And this kind of courage, and I know there's the whole, you're not always David, sometimes you're the cowards that are watching David, and Jesus is kind of used as an example in David's place. But I feel like these are stories that are taught to kids, and I think they're effective. When my kids hear the story of David and Goliath, they start acting it out. It's like there's this sense of courage, they're boys, that they receive from reading the story. So how about when you see stories like that? I have David's story here. I have Paul speaking about grit and endurance, suffering, being beaten, whipped, shipwrecked, starving, in danger, just this constantly moving, constantly fighting despite the kind of things that are thrown his way. These traits just seem to pump up men and bring that masculine side of Christianity out. So if you want to give your thoughts on some of that stuff.
Yeah, I think the David story is very interesting because it's counter what we would think about when it comes to masculinity. So hear me out here. David is a young shepherd boy. He's not a trained, hardened military warrior. Now, he's done things throughout his life that essentially needed bravery, right? Like as a shepherd. But if you looked at David, you wouldn't say, this is the guy I want to be leading my army.
Yeah.
He's a young man. He doesn't seem like he's an individual that's like, and I'll tell you the reason biblically for this, like that's tall and general looking or something like that. Partly because in the text, what we'll see is when the people select Saul to be king, they looked into the crowd and they saw the tallest guy and the most kingly looking guy, and they elected him and they selected him to be their leader. With David, God does the selecting, and then it's sort of a contrast to Saul. In that Saul was this military-looking dude, where David's the opposite. He's young, he's a shepherd, he doesn't look like that. But he's a warrior. He has bravery. So again, I think and the contrast of like human beings look with their eyes, but God looks to the heart. God looks at things that are beyond whatever the physical appearance and perception of a thing would be. So I think that's important to realize in the David story. And David's a warrior. Like David ends up not only the killing of Goliath, but the rest of his life and the wars he fights and the battles he has. And obviously he grows into that, right? He doesn't like always remain the shepherd boy.
Yeah, but so can I jump in here? Isn't that kind of the point of it, though? I guess you led the conversation exactly where I was hoping you would go, where Jesus or God takes even men who are sort of cowardly or maybe wouldn't seem the type to be masculine and aggressive, and then he helps give them the traits that would make them masculine and like kind of aggressive and warriors. Even if you look at the story of Gideon, for example, he's reluctant, he's scared, he's hiding. But when God starts giving him those traits of obedience, of taking responsibility, courage, leading others into battle, it seems like even in those examples where it's the less general masculine guy, like, oh, he's the tallest one in the crowd, he's the strongest one, it seems like even those God takes and then gives them traits or uses traits that we would consider to be manly and masculine and strong, and then that's where they really shine.
Yeah, but I think part of it is to show God's strength in the situation. Yeah. So even with Gideon, like the army gets reduced so that it's obvious that God's the one winning this war. It's not them.
Yeah. That's
and
right.
Again, that matters a lot. With David, it's his physical stature, but here's the cool things you see with David, because we were talking about worship earlier.
Yeah.
Like he's a warrior. But then he's got this, what I would say, sensitive side to him. He's writing poetry and music. And he's really good at it. And we know this about him previously to the whole story because he gets taken to Saul's court and all that stuff. And I think it's such a good balance where you have this, what I would call a warrior poet.
Yeah.
And in maybe in the modern context, and this is why I was saying there might be a danger of equivocation here where we're talking about like, oh, being emotional is a feminine thing. Like David is very emotional. Read his stuff.
Yeah.
But he's also a warrior. And there has to be a good balance to this. Like Jesus, I always use this example that Jesus is not afraid to weep and cry at the tomb of Lazarus.
Yeah.
Like publicly crying. How many guys do we know that would be like the manly guys, the manly man, who don't have any issues to publicly weep in front of others?
That's right.
Who won't walk around, oh, they might think I'm weak and this and that. It's like, no, you're confident, you're comfortable in your own skin to be able to do that. So big shout out here to Jacobson. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that's a big
super chat.
That's a big
man.
one.
You know, it's funny because I didn't mention this, but we're going to be spending some money buying equipment. We got to get you a chair. We got to get you a nice table.
That's right.
and we're probably gonna, I don't know, we're spending like $200 to $300 for those things.
Because I'm using this very feminine iPhone holder right now.
But like a good amount of that's been given today without us even asking. So thank you guys. Appreciate it. Hey guys, we're not going to turn our chat section into a conversation with Vartan. So if we need to block him, block him. He blocked me on Instagram. So mods, block him. Because he's not going to take over our chat.
And
he has no sense of control over himself.
Wow. I didn't know things were going to get this spicy this morning.
Yeah. So mods, just take care of it. Thank you.
Yeah. So no, you're definitely right. I think, by the way, when we say emotional, there's different ways to show emotion. So being emotional is not necessarily just crying. So I would agree with you. The emotion, saying like women are emotional is like not a bad thing. Or saying men are emotional is not a bad thing. You can show your emotion in multiple ways. You can be crying because something touched you deeply, you watched a movie or you heard a story, or you could be like emotional like Jesus was, storming in and showing his emotion that way. And yeah, I don't know if I agree with
or weeping over Jerusalem.
Yeah. You mentioned that this Sunday when we were speaking afterwards. Yeah, weeping over Jerusalem. It's funny because I gave this like glorious entry of Jesus in my during worship, and I was like, it's funny. I put an Instagram story of like this like hype music with Jesus on Jesus like coming into Jerusalem with all the branches and stuff like that around him, and then I gave this super pumped up like he was coming in like a king, he was coming in like he was making entrance, and then you came up and said something like, and he was weeping over Jerusalem. It's like, come on, man.
Not right afterwards.
No. It was after service, but I was like, way to make my pump up moment this emotional.
I enjoyed the pump up moment because I think that ought to pump you up. Like, this is the King of the universe that is entering Jerusalem, and how long have waited? And he says that you missed the time of your visitation.
That's right.
Right.
Saves the Day says, was it not David's faith that won God's favor? David had courage, no doubt, but it was David's faith that made him prevail, not courage. What do you think about that?
I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. Yeah. I think those things could work together. Quite often, one of the things we realize is that God does use people who are courageous and faithful. But nonetheless, they're courageous.
Yeah. Amen to that.
Yeah, I don't know why people make those distinctions. Like, you either have, like, you're a coward but has faith and God's going to use you. As a matter of fact, I'm not very sure whether you can be a coward and be a man of faith.
Yeah.
Because faith requires risk. Like, faith is, the idea behind faith is trust. And so faith requires risk. And you can't be a coward who takes risks. Cowards don't do that. And so I think David is courageous. I mean, his whole line about Goliath, who is this uncircumcised Philistine who talks like this? That's not only like a faithful thing. That's a courageous statement to make, knowing that guy can probably step on your head, like, just destroy you.
That's right. How about some stuff more in the life of Jesus, Art? Where do you see examples of Jesus sort of, because you know what's funny, when you listen to a lot of liberal commentators speak about Jesus, it's always like Christians are so hateful and sexist and this and all the isms, and it's like, but Jesus was like so humble and kind, and he was this quiet teacher, and he was loving towards everybody, and he was just, and it's weird because that's not the view of Jesus I have. Like, I don't see Jesus as this like there's a long hair man just walking around, this hipster that's like, oh my God, I love you so much, you're wonderful, let me heal your leg, and like, I don't see him that way. I see him as being balanced, as you said, loving, weeping, but also being aggressive, also putting his foot down, also calling out the Pharisees. Like, he's a balanced individual, even in his in his short time on earth, where I guess, where do you see some examples of Jesus's character where maybe the liberal side of the aisle gets it wrong, where you're like, no, look at Jesus, look at how he's speaking here. He's not some like quiet, held back individual.
Yeah, so here's a passage out of Matthew chapter 23, and just pull this up. It says, I mean, in what tone do you expect Jesus to be saying this? Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are like whitewashed tombs, which outwardly appear beautiful, but within are full of dead people's bones and all uncleanness. So you also outwardly appear righteous to others, but within you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. I mean, what kind of a tone do we read into that? Now, the translators of our Bibles try to get you to understand some of this by, say, putting certain markers, right? Like an exclamation point at the end of hypocrites, like he's yelling this.
Yeah.
Like there's an aspect of like his voice is elevated. He's not just like passively saying, woe to you, you know.
Yeah.
He's coming at them. And so that's an example that I see in his confrontation with the religious leaders. And this isn't like any confrontation. This isn't like you are arguing over, you know, Instagram text or YouTube comment section.
Yeah.
These people can have you killed really quickly. These are very powerful people you're having these conversations with, and these things you're saying to them.
That's right.
They're very, very powerful people that Jesus is confronting and saying, you guys look like you're the real deal. You looked righteous, but inside you are dead.
Yeah, and even in some smaller scenarios where maybe it's not confronting the Pharisees, but it's rebuking his disciples for falling asleep. Things like that, I see Jesus as being this sort of like contained powerhouse, or when he's sleeping on the ship and they're all panicking.
Yeah.
And he just sort of gets up like, I got this, calm down. And all these emotions.
Yeah, but I love the ship one, man. It's really cool because I went through this last week with a bunch of students. So it says Jesus got up and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, be calm. And I was like, I wonder how he rebuked the wind. Like, what did he say? And the way he says it to the sea, he's not like yelling or anything. He's like, be calm. And I feel like the way he might have rebuked the wind might have been close to that, where he just says, be quiet.
Yeah.
Like, and it is. And then everybody's kind of response is they're terrified of Jesus. They're scared of Jesus. And then they ask amongst themselves, who is this man that even nature obeys him, that the wind and the waves obey him? And that's so amazing. That he didn't have to yell, he doesn't have to do incantations. He's sort of just like, be quiet.
Yeah.
And nature obeys him. Because he's the one that has the authority to do that. But there's that aspect too, where he's not yelling. He's not kind of in your face confronting. He's just very plainly speaking in an extremely calm way. Now, I don't know if you've ever come across very dangerous people. I assume you have. People that you know
yeah,
can end your existence in that moment.
For sure.
And the terrifying thing about them is that they're so calm.
Yeah, my wife.
I don't know about that. But there was a certain gentleman we were sitting with yesterday, you and I. If he wanted to, he'd, break our legs and arms and twist them into a pretzel.
That's right.
Because he has the skill to do that. He's a super calm guy. I've never seen him lose his cool. I've never seen him kind of get up and yell or showcase that and tell people that he can do that. The scary thing, I guess, is like individuals that tell you they're going to do something like that. You're like, okay, bro, there's a lot of like loudness here.
Yeah.
The individuals that can actually do that are just quietly sitting in a corner. And if that does happen, they will do that. And quite often I see that with Jesus. It is this kind of calm demeanor in situations where he doesn't like throw himself. He doesn't get involved. Even think about the turning of the water into wine. He doesn't get involved.
Yeah.
He someone else gets him involved into that situation. His mom gets him involved into that situation. But he's not out there like, let me fix this. Let's see what's going on.
Yeah.
He's just that quietly waiting. And I would say that might actually be a trait of masculinity as well. You don't always have to be the loud mouth who's always yelling and doing that. You can just wait, and the opportunity, if you're ready for the opportunity will come to you. I think God will raise the opportunity or raise you up to that opportunity or to that situation.
We're humans, men and women, humans created in the image of God. We're definitely going to have traits that are masculine and feminine, and however you define these things. And there's going to be definitely like isolated situations or exceptions. Here's a story. I was in Glendale one time. I was working there, and I went to grab juice from one of the juice bars there. I think it was actually called Juice Bar, and I saw Ronda Rousey there after a fight, and she had lost the fight badly. I think it was to Holly Holm.
Yeah.
And I remember she was kind of quiet, and she was with her massive husband. I think at the time that guy could definitely lay you out easily. But I remember, and I looked at her, and she looked sad. And I said, hi, how you doing, and stuff like that. She said hi. She was actually pretty nice. But I was like, man, this girl could probably just destroy me right now and just leave me on the floor like with my eyes shut. But she didn't seem that way. So there are exceptions like that. And I'm not saying that just because men have certain feminine features or women have certain masculine features that, it has to be one or the other. But I do see a general example when I look at scriptures. I see these things in godly men where I also hate that. Like, these guys are not all cowards.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this guy was a coward. This guy was nothing and God took him. This guy was, I don't see that. I see men that maybe have not realized the full potential of their courage. And they need somebody, and in the examples we have, it's God, to come and say, hey, listen, I got this. I'm in control. I'll help you in this battle. It's my power, but I'm going to use you, and I'm going to build up these traits within you to take you there, to make you that person you need to be. There's a comment here from Give Thanks. It says, Jesus could send 12 legions of angels to stop himself from being taken, I'm assuming, yet he let them take him. True strength is being able to stop someone, but won't for a greater purpose, a great cost, manly.
Yeah, that's a good comment. That's absolutely true.
Mm.
I mean, he says it. He literally says, look, he says to Pilate, you think you have authority? No authority has been given to you except by my Father. Like, you have this authority because God's placed you in this place to have this authority. And it also shows the fact that Jesus is willingly laying down his life. He's sacrificing himself for others.
That's right.
And so,
which is also very manly.
That's right.
Mm. So you can look at it both ways there.
Yeah, he's not being passive at all.
Yeah.
Again, I would want, because there's a lot of ladies in the chat as well, we might be doing a disservice a little bit here by equating femininity with certain traits or something like that. Like, I frankly, in the most realistic sense, I think we all have a balance of these things, like a very good balance. And there might be, I don't think it's a 50-50 balance. There are definitely things that I think just come with being a biological male. And there are things that, oh man, I'm remembering something. And and then there are things that come with being a biological female. So for example, this is what I remember. This is what made me laugh. You remember there was a video of Ben Shapiro sitting down and they were having this trans conversation?
Yeah.
And there was this trans person next to him.
That's right.
And the reaction of like putting your hand on Ben Shapiro and being like, I'll take you out in the parking lot. I'm going to crush you. Women don't do that.
Yeah, he was like, or he who had become a she was like, if you say that again, I'm going to beat you to the ground while holding this kid. It's like, oh, dude, you sound pretty manly there. That's kind of scary. Yeah.
Like, just generally, that is not a way women react to situations. Again, generalizing here. You're like, I know this woman who did it. Okay, congratulations.
Yeah.
But that would be a thing that a lot of guys do.
That's right.
And I just thought it was hilarious that the individual was acting that way in a very masculine sort of way, because that's just like we're built into that. Like we have that built into us.
Also,
and then there's things women do, bro. There's things women do that I can do as well, but women just do it better. And it's more natural, you could say, to them. For example, it's very interesting that when my kids hurt themselves, I'm not the first person they run to.
Yeah.
And that's not because my kids run to me when they're hurt and I'm like, get over it, move away. Like, I genuinely, like, my son cut his finger yesterday, and your wife was the one helping him mend. It was a pretty bad cut. He had a pretty nasty cut on his finger. And like, I didn't go to him and I was like, what? Let me see that. Oh yeah. Half your finger is cut. Get over it.
Yeah.
It's like, no, man, let's clean it up, Band-Aid and stuff. But it's interesting that they will run to their mom first. Because there's a certain kind of comfort. And I don't ever want to replace that. I think it'd be a disservice to women to make it seem like that's like a weaker or thing.
Yeah.
Again, part of it has to do with God's intent for males and females and how we co-labor together, and how whatever we are, when properly matured, I would say, is brought together, creates a really good dynamic for other people to be born and raised in.
That's right.
Where they're like balanced personalities.
Also, ladies, be patient. There's a second side to this where we talk about different traits in the Bible. I'm just trying to get kind of aggressive on the masculine side of things. I saw an interesting comment here, Arthur. What do you think about this? Buddy Rivera said, according to Barna, women are leaving the church at a higher rate than men are right now.
Yeah, I haven't seen those statistics. I'm just going to trust them on it.
Yeah. Why would that be?
I don't know. Statistics are very interesting because they could be used and misused and applied in all sorts of ways.
Funny thing I saw today, kind of off topic, but I saw a video from Trent Horn where he's talking about Protestantism is winning. I think that was the title of the video.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I should watch this.
Yeah, it was very interesting, actually. I wish this would be one of the cool things I would like to react to one of these days. But he's giving statistics about like the online world is saying, well, people are moving to Orthodoxy, people are moving to Catholicism, and then they do this like insane giant statistic
demographic,
and it's not even close. Like Protestants are remaining Protestants more, and then there's this like weird things that skew the statistics where it seems like Catholicism is losing a bunch of people, but then they're also gaining a bunch of people. But he talks about in the video where this is actually due to immigration. So as you get more people from South America come up to the United States, you get an increase in the Catholic population, but in reality, from your citizens here, it's actually on the decline. And calm down to all the Orthodox folk out there. You're not this like crazy thing that's growing. And like I walk out on the street and my neighbors are like, "Shalom, brother, I am now an Orthodox." And you see a bunch of like priests hanging out at restaurants with their cute wardrobes on. Like this is not happening. Not everything happening in the online world in these conversations are things that we're seeing. I'm seeing our Protestant churches grow. I'm seeing people interested in Catholicism. Like, yeah, there is this fluctuation. Definitely, there are these changes. But like, calm down. It's not like everywhere you go on the street right now, there's like Orthodox churches being erected, and people are just like walking around chanting stuff in the mall. Like, calm down. By the way, I'm not. I listen to some Orthodox priests and stuff. I was actually listening to one that was getting emotional, speaking about something Paul said, and he was crying. And I thought that was beautiful, and I think Emil shared it. But yeah, so just chill out on those.
Again, statistics are very weird to me. One of the things I was having a conversation with one of my friends, and this is not anything against Orthodox or Catholic folks. I find it interesting that a lot of the people that I know, so this is anecdotal to my person, even on the YouTube kind of space, a lot of people that I know and see that are becoming Orthodox or Catholic are becoming that from being Protestant.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily, and not saying these people don't exist, because I know they do. They're not necessarily unbelievers who, and however you want to categorize that, right? Unbeliever could mean atheist, it could mean, Muslim, it could be any one of the things, who are just going into Eastern Orthodoxy or Catholicism.
Yeah.
And I've heard Orthodox priests say things like, well, we don't evangelize, we just exist. And God will bring the people to Orthodoxy. And I find that like a very interesting thing, especially as an evangelical, because it's a part of evangelical identity to be missional.
Yeah.
Like when I say I'm evangelical, that means a bunch of stuff. It means the way I live my life is from the perspective of being a missional individual. Being an evangelical means to evangelize. It's not just a set of beliefs I hold to, but it also has to do with the way I live my life in relation to my neighbor who might not be a Christian. And so I find those things to be a bit interesting when you get what I would say is parallel transfers, and how that impacts the statistical formulation of these things. Like, oh, we're growing. Okay, what does that mean? Let me put it in a very, very simple sense. If I came to you and said, hey, our church over the last year had 1,000% growth, you'd be like, wow, man, that's like intense numbers. And then suppose you figured out that 1,000% growth was because there was a mega church in my community that closed down, and a bunch of the people from that mega church ended up, or there was a scandal or something, and a bunch of the people from that mega church ended up at our church.
Yeah.
And you go, should we consider that growth? Well, in one sense, yes, because they're coming to your church and there's growth in there. In another sense, no, because they're not necessarily unbelievers that have become believers. And so there's a growth in that. And so I'm curious when people say these things, when they say, well, Catholicism is growing or Islam is growing. We say this about Muslims all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, Islam is growing by these numbers. And then Christians usually will come at it and say, well, hang on. It's not actually conversion growth. It's just birth rate.
Yeah.
And so should we consider that growth? You're just having babies. And I would say the same thing when it comes to these statistical analysis. Like I want the finer details of it, right? I want to see, did they go here because theology, they became more convinced of the theology. So I was talking to a good friend of the channel who's in the process of becoming Orthodox, Nick Norelli. We went on his channel where we had a really good dialogue on Friday. And Nick's become convinced of orthodoxy and he's becoming Orthodox. But he's been a believer for, I don't know, like close to 20 years, maybe more than that. Like what people, you can't say he's an unbeliever that became a believer now. He became convinced of it. So it's a theology transference kind of thing happening versus the guy didn't know anything and then became that. And I'd say the same thing about Protestants, right?
Yeah.
Like Lutheran becomes Presbyterian.
Do you think that this trend, or even in small amounts, like your friend you're talking about, is due to like being so, the online space being kind of giving you that? Because I was thinking, if I walked into a Orthodox church, I'm not, and I have, by the way, so this is not me just saying if I did, I'm not getting a lot of theology there. At least in the churches I've experienced or people I've spoken to. Not that obviously you can't go speak to the priest after and have them explain, and I'm sure they're very caring and loving and all that stuff. But it's not like you're walking to church, an Orthodox church, and immediately knowing like, wow, this is very convincing theology. Where I feel like that's more possible if you're going into a like a Protestant, like if you're walking in the Grace Community Church, you would know their theology pretty quickly. Or if you walk into our church, you would kind of know where we stand pretty quickly within 3 weeks of sermons.
Yeah.
You know? Why do you think someone like your friend, let's not use me as an example.
Yeah.
Why do you think someone would be moving towards orthodoxy? Like, where would they be convinced of the arguments?
Oh, there could be a number of arguments that they're convinced that.
No, not the arguments, but where is the location where these arguments are being presented, and then this?
Oh yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say it's an online space, because these things, specifically with orthodoxy, started happening happened. They happened in the late 80s and early 90s as well. So you can't just say it's an
online.
Yeah, I think. I'm be a little critical here, but I think it's a failure of evangelical churches, predominantly like non-denominational churches who haven't taken theology seriously. And so one of the things that ended up happening is individuals that took theology seriously grew up and studied it. Usually these are people who ended up studying theology pretty seriously. College, graduate level, or just in their lives were studying it seriously, and realized there was things they wanted out of their churches that weren't allowed or being presented or whatever like that. And then so they moved over to orthodoxy. But also they got convinced with certain doctrinal points. So I think you've seen similar things with people moving to Anglicanism because high church Anglicans. So I give you a very simple example. Hank Hanegraaff was a really good example that became Eastern Orthodox. Like I used to listen to Hank Hanegraaff. He was on the radio all the time. He's been a really big blessing in my life. And so that's a theological conviction he took on and became that. So one of the issues, for example, this came up recently in regards to the conversation with the Eastern Orthodox, the Oriental Orthodox gentleman and Cliff and Stewart, Connectly.
Yeah.
And I kept away from commenting on this because too many people have commented on it in regards to analyzing the situation and all that. So I'm not doing that. But suppose the idea that, you Protestants believe in a memorial view of the Eucharist. And well, that's not true. The question is, can you even be in a Protestant setting and not be convinced about a memorial view anymore and remain there? And in a lot of settings, I can see someone saying, no, I'm going to move into a different denomination just because of that issue. So they might end up becoming Lutheran.
Yeah.
Right? They might become Anglican. Or if there's some additional things that they're convinced of, they will move on into being Catholic or Orthodox, depending on some of the finer details there. And these are important issues we ought to think about. Like we've recently in our church gone through kind of a review of what, and then we did a little pivot, but in regards to what our view is on this issue specifically. So yeah, I don't think it's just like, there's masculinity involved or something like that, so therefore I'm going to go there. No.
My point was statistically, Protestants are actually retaining more of their numbers than the other like Orthodox or I mean, this was at least what I was listening to. Maybe we can view it one day and look at what he's saying.
So a very easy, good question to ask is, who is more missional? Who has more missions organizations? Who's sending people into places that nobody wants to go to share the gospel? Is it the Orthodox doing it? Is it the Catholic doing it? Or is it the Protestants doing it?
Yeah.
I think that's a very good question to ask. It's a fair question to ask. And then maybe even let it be a challenging thing to your own denomination. Whatever, like even sub-denominations, let's just say. So if Jesus told us to go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, all ethnic groups, and there might be a weird idea out there that this has been accomplished, which is okay. Why is it that your folks, your denomination, isn't focusing in on that? So Catholics have done it and do it. Right? I'm not very sure. I can't comment on Orthodox missions. and how outreach oriented they are. As far as I know, Armenians don't do it.
I mean, full armor of God seems very mission oriented.
Well, towards Armenians only. Yeah, towards
No, I
Armenians
was
only.
kidding there.
Yeah. Again, I can't comment on like, because notice the difference. Like you get Orientals, you get Oriental
Yeah.
Orthodox in the Armenian context versus Oriental Orthodox in like the Egyptian context. That looks very different.
Yeah.
Because look at the amount of Muslims in Egypt and how that frames you and forms you in regards to being outreach oriented to your Muslim neighbor, and whether that's even allowed for in the country and all that stuff. Versus in the Armenian context, it's very different.
Yeah, especially when it comes to the Armenian church, since it's so closely connected to being an Armenian, and being part of the church. That's the thing. I feel like I might be wrong about this because I've been in an echo chamber, which sometimes is a problem with the online space. It seems like you're always either getting recommended videos or speaking to people that just hold your view, and so you're like, yeah, it's definitely got to be like this.
Yeah.
But it seems like, in my opinion, Protestants, I would say Bible-believing Protestants, I'm not talking about like wacko churches and stuff, do a better job of calling out people who are not truly part of the faith.
Yeah, just missions organizations.
Yeah.
Like look at all the missions organizations all across the world.
Yeah.
Who's it run by?
Yeah.
And I think that matters.
But here's the thing, like if you came to Glendale and did or this area, Los Angeles area in general, and kind of did a statistical thing with Armenians of where their faith lands them. Are they Protestant? Are they Orthodox? You would get a crazy number, like 90% are part of the Armenian church, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you would get like 5%, maybe even less, being Protestant, evangelical, etc. And you get a few percent being non-believer, right? So you would look at that and say, look at that, like in Los Angeles, the Protestants aren't doing too well. But then it's like they're just assumed to be, they're baptized in the church and assumed to be faithful and adhering to the teachings of Jesus and Paul, but there's this weird thing I don't understand about Orthodoxy and sometimes Catholicism, where you're in the fold even if you're not practicing it at all.
Well, baptism.
Yeah, but through baptism, that's right. But where we do kind of like if there's a church next door and they're misrepresenting Jesus and not preaching the gospel, and someone came to me and said, do you think these guys are Christians? They call themselves evangelical Christian. I'm like, no, they're not. Yeah. Like they're not. I guess it's also harder to measure Protestants of like where they are, because it's like, what makes them a Protestant? Could they be like LGBT affirming and then be Protestants? There's a bunch of those. Would we want those to be in our numbers? Probably not. So it's difficult, but yeah. Anyways. That's the point I was making.
That does matter if we want to be like more nuanced and proper thinkers on these kinds of demographic research or whatever. It really matters that we break it down appropriately.
Yeah.
Right. Because you might go to the South and have the opposite issue.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Like, so you might go to the South and you go around and you ask people and it's like, well, 98% Protestant. It's like, well, how many of those people actually follow Jesus? I was talking to someone the other day and I was talking about like a southern state where the pastor was talking about how in a certain southern state, he went from California to there and he's like, everybody's a Christian here, but they're not. Like they're doing wild stuff and then showing up to church on Sunday as if that's okay. And then the other person told me, he said, the difference is in California, you have to want to be a Christian. In some states, it's just assumed that you are. And so there's a religious context. Like Jesus speaks into a religious context.
Yeah, but you know what's a little confusing about that? If you and I were to go to the South and just assume that majority are going to be Christians, and a lot of those majority of that is going to be Protestants, for example, right? Or evangelicals, Southern evangelical Christians, right? So that's what you're thinking, right? Baptists and stuff. So you walk in and you ask someone, hey, what's your religion, in a conversation? Like, oh, and they go like, oh, I'm a Christian, yeah. You and I are not automatically going to assume they're Christians. We're, at least if we had a longer conversation with that person, we'd be like, hey, where do you go to church? well, what do you hold to?
Yeah.
And then you would kind of start understanding, oh, is this person? But I feel like from my experience, and guys, I could be completely wrong. I don't want like being attacked online. This is not my daily job. But from my experience, if an Orthodox person who's, let's say, really involved in the religion is asking someone like, hey, what's your religion? They go, I'm a Christian. I'm a baptized Armenian Apostolic Christian. It would just be assumed by that person that that they're in the fold.
Yeah, I think there might be a bit more nuancing than that, because there is internally with Catholics and Orthodox of like, are you actually living this out? Like, yes, this is your like identity or whatever like that, but if the individual asking is actually a committed Christian in that context, they're going to want more information. What does this look like practically in your life? Right? So, like, I don't know, like one of the things that's going to probably come up is like, do you go to mass regularly? Because that matters.
Yeah.
In a Catholic sense, that matters. You got to go to mass regularly.
Yeah, definitely.
So are you partaking of the Eucharist regularly? Like, do you go to confession regularly? When was the last time you went to confession, right? The committed individuals are going to want answers to these questions, and it's not enough for someone to say, well, you know what, like I was baptized as a kid, and like I haven't been to church since then.
Yeah.
Like, but I, sort of kind of believe in God. And I think there is an aspect in all the Christian denominations we're talking about where you have individuals that are really committed to Jesus and then individuals that are not.
Yeah.
And then maybe individuals that are like sort of interested. And this has always been the case. So this is why I think people will pick on the weaker side of the other and be like, oh, look, they got destroyed or whatever like that. It's like, you're being unfair. I can go pick on a Catholic who's not actually really a faithful Catholic.
Yeah.
And then be like, see, he doesn't know, and this is what Catholics are like. It's like, no, you're just being uncharitable and unfair. I would say unchristian. And the same thing could be done, a really knowledgeable Orthodox guy goes and finds someone who's like identifies as a Baptist, and destroys him or whatever like that. It's like, no, you're not being very charitable because clearly that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, you just asked him a question about the Trinity and he made a mess of it, but you've read theology books on the subject. It's like we have to have fair conversations when it comes to this. And really, like, I mean conversations. And we can disagree at the end of the day. Clearly we can disagree. But at least be fair in the way we're characterizing the other. That's like, I think as Christians, we can definitely ask for fairness. Right?
Yeah.
We have to ask for fairness because I think God is fair. Jesus is fair. And so be like him. Disagree at the end of the day. Say, cool, man, I heard your side. Is that the best argument that could be, what's the church's official stance on this subject, for example? And then somebody goes, I don't know what the church's stance on it. Okay, like, where can we find out? Well, you can go check out, church canon law or something like that. And it's like, you look it up and you go, okay, cool, I disagree with it. But at least that's like the official documentation on the matter. That's what they say. That's where they take their stance. Yeah. Rather than this guy said that girl said that, and then it's just...
What's interesting to me, though, maybe you have an answer for this, but it for me, it doesn't seem unfair to make this point. If you go to... I'm just going to use Armenians as an example since we're here, right? In our context. If you go to Armenians who are part of the Armenian Apostolic Church and say, are you Christian? Their response will be yes.
Yeah.
And then when you look at an overarching view of their churches, attendance and stuff like that, I mean, it's a tiny percentage of those people generally attending those churches or being involved in their weekly, whatever they do, programs and things of that sort. There obviously are devoted ones that are there. I know some of them, but it's not this like all those people aren't necessarily going to church, but it seems like in generally they're assumed to be part of the church. Or when I say fold, by the way, someone commented that's what I mean, like part of the church.
Yeah.
That church. When you go to Armenian evangelicals and you say, are you a Christian? Are you an evangelical Christian? And let's say their response is yes. guarantee you statistically you're going to see more involvement in their
I think
lives.
that's just because it's a minority majority issue.
Mm.
If we become the majority culture, you're going to see the same issue. Like I think that's the example I gave between like California and Texas, right? Or the southern state. Let me just pick on Texas.
Even statistically, you think that's the case? Like,
yeah,
forget
I think
the numbers,
so.
Just percentage of the group.
Yeah, because.
So you think the percentage of Armenian evangelicals that claim to be Armenian evangelical have the same church attendance as the percentage of?
No, I think there's a higher percentage.
Okay, yeah.
That actually have church attendance. That's partly because one is a status quo. That's the other thing. Like you get a status quo. Yeah. You're in Italy. Let's just say you're in Italy, so you're Catholic because you're Italian. Versus when you become Protestant in Italy, you've made a step away from something rather than just remaining in the status quo and what your culture's told you.
Yeah.
Right. And so especially if you can like remain in that identity and not do anything about it, because you've done something active, you're actively pursuing something, your numbers are going to go up higher, for example. And it could be the case that you have like both churches have 30 members. They have 30 people regularly attending. But then on Easter, what do you see? It's like 200 people here. And you get like 45 people here. But what happens the week after Easter? Oh, it's back to 25. And this is back to 25. And so you go, well, no, they're sort of the same. But part of the reason why I think we see what we see in regards to statistically higher percentage of that is because it takes work to become that. Where in the other context, you just sort of do what you're told. It doesn't take much work unless you're an actually committed, whatever, Orthodox, Oriental, Catholic. But I think the same thing happens in majority Protestant places. This is partly why I don't think quoting statistics to people means much. Like it's most of the time it's very meaningless in conversation to me. It doesn't prove anything until you start asking the really, really detailed questions. Then maybe you can figure some stuff out. They're helpful. They're helpful guidelines. But yeah, I wouldn't use it in a debate and say, well, 80% of Americans are Christians. I said, come on, bro. Like seriously, definitely. Or whatever, 60%. Or it's like, what does that mean, really? Because don't tell me I'm going to walk into church and 80% of Americans are at a church on a weekly basis on Sundays. Because that's not happening. When they're asked, they say, yeah, well, I'm a Christian. Like, so it's like a cultural identity thing.
Yeah, but it seems like what you're saying to me is if you're born in, let's say, Italy, and you're baptized at a young age, and you're a part of the Catholic Church and things of that sort, that it seems like what you're saying to me is that shouldn't be the case. For example, if I go and ask a Catholic priest in Italy, like, let's say 80% of your population goes to mass, goes to, is baptized and all that kind of stuff into the Catholic Church. Are they saved? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm assuming the response would be yes, they're saved.
I think it's a bit more complicated than that, partly because they don't think about salvation the way you and I do.
Yeah.
Again, I'm trying to be charitable.
Yeah,
here.
No, you are, but it's not. I guess it's not wrong to call. It's not wrong to say they're thinking about salvation wrong. That's the whole point of why we're not like adhering to those churches, right?
Yeah. So it's the question might be like, hey, this guy that was baptized as an infant in X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Like if you were to die right now, you think you go to hell?
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know what the response to that would be because I've heard multiple responses. One of them might be sure, yeah. The other one might be no, he was baptized, so he'll end up in purgatory or something like that. And whatever that looks like. Then in that case, like, are they just saying the people, and it could be that the people who will actually end up in hell are people who haven't been baptized.
Yeah.
And again, they could be saying that. And that's where maybe I can have a more confident stance, let's just say, I think you're wrong about this. Like this guy cares nothing about Jesus. There's no presence of the Holy Spirit in his life. if I were to judge him by the fruit he's bearing, he looks worse than an unbeliever. And so what am I to conclude in that?
Yeah.
Right. And then we can have a conversation there. Should I respond to that last comment that just came in?
Yeah.
So some people are like, we've switched course and ended up here. That's normal, guys, for long-winded conversations where we'll start with the subject and end up somewhere else. That's okay. We just let the topic guide us.
Yeah, we can.
Mr. Unitarian says, I'll tell you what is too feminine. Trinitarians are easily offended and even more ready to censor differing positions. Every Trinitarian I have engaged with, after a few minutes, turns hostile and blocks me, i.e., Sam Shamoon. Let me just generally give you some wisdom, Mr. Unitarian. So from one Mr. to the other. Right, Tom? So let Mr. Apologetic tell you something. If you have the same interaction with, I'm just going off of what you said, every Trinitarian. If you have the same interaction with every single person, 9 out of 10 times you're the problem, not them. 9 out of 10 times you are the problem. Maybe you're just a jerk. Like, maybe it has nothing to do with your Unitarian doctrine. You're just an extremely annoying individual. If everyone you talk to has that same reaction.
Yeah.
It's sort of like if I'm like, every atheist I talk to does the following. It's like, really? You've never come across a different kind of atheist? Seems highly unlikely. Or you're just attracted to the wrong kind of folks. Every relationship I've had ends in disaster. Maybe you're the problem. Not the women. Just saying. It's some advice. I don't know how old you are. I hope you're young. But if you're
every waiter at every restaurant is terrible.
No, you're just bad.
Yeah, you see them ordering and they're like, yeah, I get it. I get what you're saying. I just think you're being overly gracious today, by the way. This is a very uncomfortable side of you that I don't like.
What are you talking about?
You generally just... I don't know, man. I think you're... Never mind.
Say it.
No, it's okay.
No. Say it. We said. Remember what we said when we started the stream.
Yeah, I just think when you look at certain areas in again going back to the subject in Catholicism, in the Orthodox churches and evangelicalism, I just feel like there's certain truths that regardless of how people can behave in like, there are Catholics who wouldn't view those people as just automatically saved, even in our context, the way we think about salvation. So that just means that, yeah, like, it's normal. Like, there are Catholics that are going to judge by I don't like just generally speaking, that doesn't seem, if your identity in your religion is so closely related to your ethnicity or culturally, that's problematic for me. And for me to call that out, and then they go like, well, that's not just because an Italian is a Catholic doesn't mean we're automatically assuming they're just wonderful Catholic. But it's like, you kind of are, the way I see it, at least.
But I think that's a fair criticism. But in order for me to get to that criticism, I want to understand them properly in regards to what they're saying. So I'll give you a personal example. If somebody comes to me, if I said, look, when I was 16 years old, right before I became a believer, if I died, would I have gone to hell? And somebody says, no, Arthur, whatever, they give me their, and my response to them is, you're talking nonsense. I would have absolutely gone to hell. Because I had nothing in me that would have remotely been considered a relationship with Jesus. Nothing. Now, again, me and you grew up differently.
Yeah.
You grew up in a Protestant setting. You grew up in a believing home, and I didn't. I would have gone to hell. I was a heathen, man, a God hater. Right? What Paul says in Ephesians 2. It's true of me. Like, are we not saying that's not true of people any longer? No, we're saying that's very true of people. That people in their natural state are separated from God, followers of Satan. Again, I understand the responses to this, and again, I might not perfectly understand it, but I think I pretty decently understand it.
But sorry to jump, but you know why this bothers me so much? It's kind of it bothers me personally a little bit. Let me tell you why.
Somebody, by the way, said, where is it? This graciousness is super feminine. I don't like it.
So the way I view it, Art, is for example, if I'm and I'm saying this based on some experience. It's not like I'm just throwing this out there like out of nowhere. So if I'm talking to a Catholic, for example, right, and I tell them, or an Orthodox person, but I don't have too many experience with people from the Eastern Orthodox Church or whatever, but I have talked to a lot of Catholics, and I'm like, well, as a Protestant, am I part of the church? And in the way you see salvation as being in relationship with Jesus and sanctification and eventually glorification, being in heaven, and being with Jesus forever, am I part of that? And the response is always this. And yeah, there's theological, minded people who are in the Catholic apologetics, and they respond to these things pretty well. But it's usually like, yeah, you're in the church, but you're not in the fullness of the church.
Sure.
Like, God will still save you in spite of your error of not actually understanding or realizing what the true church is, right? So they view so someone who's born into Catholicism goes to mass, let's say, weekly, but isn't necessarily living their life out as a believer or with those traits of what a believer should have, the fruits of the Spirit, but is baptized, doing all that stuff. Generally speaking, from what I've heard, is they will be accepted as part of the church, and as long as they don't commit a grave sin or something like that, they're part of that faith. And yet someone like me, literally me, would be someone who's like gonna make it there in spite of myself.
Yeah, complete faithfulness to Jesus.
But when I look at, for example, a Catholic who's faithful and loving to Jesus and stuff like that, my view of Protestantism is not the church. It's a true understanding of justification, sanctification, who I am in my sin, who Jesus is, what my state was. And so I can easily look at someone on the other side and be like, hey, even though maybe they disagree with me on the function of the church, the literal church, I can easily make the comment, yeah, it was still body of Christ and part of the general church of God. But they don't see me that way. So why, I guess my question to you is, why in these conversations should I be overly gracious to them? When it seems like they're much less gracious towards who I am in Jesus, or who you are. Because apparently you have no authority to speak.
I got an answer for it. You know why? Because I'm not the one who determines it. It's Jesus.
Yeah.
And so if Jesus has accepted someone, I am in no place and I have no right to say that he doesn't. This is what the Jews had issues with when it came to the Gentiles. Who are we to deny this man water if God has accepted him? When the conversations with Cornelius, right? If God has accepted the Gentiles, who the heck do we think we are? We shouldn't baptize these people, right? That's the response. I think Protestantism is way more gracious, because our view is that people are saved and come to know Jesus because of faith, through faith. And they can be wrong about a bunch of other stuff, but still know Jesus.
Yeah.
Where I think the limitations that come with Catholicism and Orthodoxy force them to say, like, stronger boundaries in regards to what I can be and what I can't be. And again, for anybody who's like really, really Protestant here, who's like, Arthur, you're saying some weird stuff, just go read Calvin and Luther on their view of Catholics, on their view of Eastern Orthodox. Like, Gavin Ortland has had really good videos about very early Protestant interactions with Catholics and Orthodox, and what the universal church is, and all that stuff. Really, really well sourced, documented things. So for me, we're saved by faith. That's what Scripture teaches. And I have no right to tell someone they're not in the kingdom. They're not a part of Jesus' body if they have faith and trust Jesus.
Yeah.
I can have disagreements on really important doctrinal points and still see them as a brother.
Yeah.
But because they, in my view, because they have prioritized certain things, it puts them in a box to make certain comments about me that I don't think are truthful when it comes to what the Bible actually teaches.
Yeah, and it's
Things like, I live a faithful life and I'm just going to kind of make it, versus some guy who's a heathen but was baptized. And it's like, well, he's not that he's just in, but hey, he's in the fullness of it. I'm like, really?
Or not even a heathen, just someone who like is maybe not a crazy, like he's not out there doing crazy stuff, but he's not living a Christian life. Yeah. But you know, it's more that it's twofold with them, because it's not that they just view our theology and they go like, hey, we disagree with them and we think their theology is really off, and that's why like we have these issues with them. It's that they're like, we disagree with them and they have to be part of the true church. It's like twofold with them, where you and I, and maybe I'm wrong in this, but I can look at them and say I disagree with them and their church structure, but I think that if they're truly obeying God, even in that church, they're part of the body of Christ. Like, I can view an Orthodox person or a Catholic person in that way. Like, they're not part of my church. They might never be part of the Protestant church, quote unquote. Yeah. But they're still faithful to God. Yeah. And so, and then the other problem I had is someone, man, this really angered me. And I'm just gonna lay it out here. And by the way, if I get called out on this, by the way, by anybody, I don't have a YouTube channel. I don't care. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna? I'll just. But it's the fact that I was listening to someone, Art, speak, and they said, you know, it's not that easy for a Protestant who wants to move into the Orthodox church. It's not that easy for you to do that. You can't just get up on YouTube and start talking, because there has to be years of work for you to. And if you can pronounce the word catechism, but there's another word for
catechumen.
Yeah, catechumen, that process. That's right. Like there's a process, and then what he said was...
A catechumen is an individual, by the way, who's going through the process
catechizing them, right? So there's a process within that being catechized, where he said you need to remove the things that you've learned in Protestantism. Like it needs to be moved from your mind, and it's going to take such a long time, because it's like this stench coming out of it. It's like, who are you? Like even if someone, like you said, has been convinced of it, what in the world needs to be removed from their mind? Like original sin, justification, redemption through the work of Jesus. Like what is so? And I guess that's where kind of I see the arrogance and pride. It's, I understand theological issues, differences, but it's like, man, if you're looking at me as so off theologically and so like not a part of your church or the fold, where I would have to go through this giant process of these termites being removed from my brain, man, you got bigger issues, brother. Because that's not even the way I view you. If somebody from the Armenian church, and I keep going into your screen, sorry, I'm learning this stuff. If somebody from the Armenian Apostolic Church goes like, man, you know what? I've been part of this church. I've even been devoted in the Armenian church, and now I'm realizing that, you know what, Protestantism or your church, Art, makes more sense. Yeah, bro, just come join the Bible studies. We'll teach you kind of, if you have questions, and then you become a brother to me, just as you were a brother before that. You've just decided, like, I'm understanding this theology a little better. I'm not like, okay, guess what's going to happen now? Well, the elders of our church are going to put you through a 3-year process of ripping out all the evil that the Armenian Apostolic Church put in you, and until that evil is not removed out of your mind and you have not become exactly like us, and then you can't, you know.
So I wonder how much of that conversation that individual was sharing was just their opinion versus like official church doctrine.
I don't think it was their opinion. By the way, this was a very legitimate person in that world. It wasn't like a rando online troll. Yeah. This person was speaking about the process of leaving Protestantism and coming to Orthodox. He was responding to someone basically who had recently become an Orthodox person, but was kind of teaching, and they shouldn't be. Oh, okay. In that context, saying like, we become like, you need to be rid of all that kind of stuff that you had
Yeah.
when you were Protestant before. I don't know.
Yeah, I again, like I said, I think Protestantism is a lot more generous when it comes to this conversation. I really do think so. Hey, I want to switch gears back to this whole feminine sort of thing.
Sorry, I threw this all off course.
No, you didn't. I mean, it's been a great conversation. Hey, chat, we good? Are we good, chat? Let me know if you're good. Drop a 1 if you are keeping up with us. And I'm going to showcase something here a little bit. We're not, I guess nobody's writing one, so nobody's watching. We haven't been on air for the last 2 hours. No. Okay. Alexandria's cool. She's okay, she's watching. Yeah, we wouldn't have to wait this long if we had like 300 viewers, by the way.
I mean, this has been nice, consistent.
I like this. But I was thinking, once we get the bookshelf behind you, and hopefully we'll get a very similar lens to this on that, dude, this stuff will be chef's kiss.
Yeah.
It's looking good. It's looking good. Tom has improved me. You have made me a better man, Tom. So we were speaking about David specifically.
Yes.
And the Psalms. I mean, we have a gigantic book in the Bible that is dedicated to music and poems and emotions. Again, I do think that probably music and poems are the best way to express our emotions. The thing I said initially was not about whether we should have emotional music. My comment had to do with it only being emotional, right? That's the problem I have, because then I think it's not balanced. It's not properly balanced. So this is out of the Logos Bible software, and there's something called the Psalm Explorer or Psalms Explorer. Now, this is a separation of the book of Psalms based on book. So book 1, book 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, you can tell that the book of Psalms has a lot more authors than David. People kind of forget that David's not the only person that is writing the Psalms. But you can also look at it by structure. And here's my favorite one, is that you look at it through genre. Because I think the genre conversation is what really helps us here. That you have Psalms that are just dedicated to lamenting. I mean, man, talk to me about emotion. Like to weep and lament.
This is a really cool graphic you have here.
Yeah, I mean, it helps you, right? Like then if we go into like praise, so let me pull this up so we're both visible. Most of all, if I look at this and I use this as a criterion for judging our worship music, like in our churches. Okay. Most of our music is in this category.
Yeah.
Right. And then the second most is in this category, Thanksgiving. Maybe we might have some songs that have trust built into it.
And barely any hymns for all those people.
Nowadays, barely any hymns. I mean, it's interesting, right? Like, so Jesus and his disciples, this is Passion Week, so you're going to see this, but Jesus and his disciples, it says they sang a hymn. I would suppose they sang one of these.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I'm guessing there a little bit. But the majority, I mean, if you count 119, which is longer than most stuff, like that's a wisdom psalm. But look at this. Majority of the psalms that we have are lament psalms. It's weeping. It's crying. Yeah. It's sad. And so if I were to use this as a criterion, I would say we're failing in regards to bringing all of it together. Now, again, we might not have royal psalms per se, but I think we can have royal psalms, because if we're speaking about Jesus as king, then that gets brought into our or worship. But biblical worship and say in musical form or praise is a lot more diverse than it is in our context. And it actually allows for more emotional responses. And I mean that where guys can be comfortable, with ladies can be comfortable, where the congregation together. Like yesterday we sang a song at church where it was essentially like the ladies and the guys singing separately. Like I love that stuff. Because you're both coming into it, and then it like you guys have got words for this stuff in music, but it mixes together, it mingles together, and becomes this beautiful chorus for the Lord. Like how wonderful is that, rather than just repetitively saying the same thing all together.
You're
It's
right.
just good music.
It's like harmonizing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely it's beautiful. And also just seeing the lament part up there for those people that say like you can't have music during worship service that's like crying out to God or pleading with him about your pain or your struggle. That's clearly not true either. It looks like that's a lot of it.
It is. It's a majority in regards to count. And here's the other thing I'd bring this up. So if you break this down, you can actually look at this in order, right? So that's normal order. But check this out. Genre, and then I go, okay, let's pick a lament psalm. Let's go to, and the bigger the circle is, the longer they are.
That's cool.
So the circle tells you how long. That's why 119 is gigantic, right? But let's pick something a bit shorter, right? Like 143. This is what I love.
Oh, you can just open up to it.
Yeah, but you can look at the structure.
That's cool.
So you go structure, give me the parallelism. It'll give you all the parallels. This is hours and hours and hours of work, right? So you see your structure here, right? And now you can, if you wanted to, you're like, give me the Hebrew. But for those who don't know Hebrew. And so you'll see the parallels. And then, again, the point of this whole structure is you pay attention to what's in the middle text, which is verses 5 and 6. And verses 5 and 6 says, I remember the days of old. I meditate on all that you have done. I ponder the work of your hands. I stretch out my hands to you. My soul thirsts for you like a parched land.
Wow.
Right. And again, I love this tool because very quickly you can get to the heart of a text. So really, really enjoy that.
So, just to not fully go off course, we were talking about some masculine features, and I had here in my notes to speak kind of on the opposite end of things. And it's like, by the way, when you say, I don't know why it just automatically assumed that if there are some traits for the gender roles, that it's like bad traits on one side. Yeah. Like why? If, for example,
if like guys can't be feminine.
No, not just that, but it's like one of the feminine traits I have here is compassionate and gentle. Why is that a bad thing? Like if I was to assume more women are compassionate and gentle, that seems like a good thing. Yeah. If I'm communicating with people and I'm like, this guy was compassionate and gentle, what a terrible human being. Yeah. That's generally how I'm talking. I'm like, oh, that person was very compassionate and gentle. That seems like a good trait. So it's like, so I have some examples here. Matthew.
Before we get into that,
go ahead.
So Jack said, what software is that? Hey, Jack, that is Logos Bible software. Logos Bible software. Hang on, because we're in the process of creating a partnership with Logos. And then one of the things that's going to come with that, I believe, is a 2-month free trial. And then some discounts and stuff like that. So hopefully we'll have that all figured out by next week, and then we'll let you guys know. So
cool.
Logos Bible software.
That's very exciting stuff.
Yeah, man, I'm excited about that. I actually had that meeting today in the morning. Before you came into the office, I was on a call with the Logos rep, and we did this remember we did this, when was it, last year or the year before, where we gave a 10% discount, but that was for like a week only. We're trying to create a longer lasting partnership with Logos because I use it all the time. It's the only thing that's on my screen. So longer lasting, that'll that'll give people a lot more stuff. So Dolphin said, how much is Logos generally? Logos has changed the way they do things, so you can build your own library. And then they have 3 packages when it comes to the monthly subscription. They've gone to a monthly subscription. And so you can build your library however you want. You can custom build a library, however much you want to spend, I would say. And then you pay for the software. And the software is not that expensive. It's like 3 cups of coffee, essentially. Depending on which package you get. And we'll do some promos and we'll spread that out for you guys. Just hang on to it. And it'll be a way for you guys to support the work that we're doing in this partnership. So
I'm excited
cool
to
stuff.
hear more about that.
Yeah,
I did hear some background on that, but I'm excited to share it with everyone.
I've been using Logos since Logos 5 came out. This is a long time ago.
What's the background on Logos? Who created this?
I don't know. I wouldn't be able to tell you. Yeah. But whoever did
Take
it,
his partnership away.
whoever, I don't know the history of it, but whoever did it really understands what it takes to study and teach and preach. And even just like these things.
Because this feels like AI before AI. Like
this is legitimate. This is legitimate work done that's put into the software.
Yeah, that's insane.
Now the recent update has AI built into it, but the AI doesn't search the web; it just searches the Logos library.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So this is again hours and hours and hours of work that you would have to do, and it's done for you so that you could just move into the text and know how the text works. Well,
Alexandra's like, if I wasn't broke, I'd have Logos. There's some good news coming up. On that.
Just hang on. We're gonna try to get you guys some nice discounts and trial versions and all that stuff.
If I wasn't poor, I'd read the Bible.
Someone say that?
No. I'm just saying. Bibles are expensive too nowadays. Like, were you the one to tell him a story of someone trying to buy a Bible and it was expensive, and then?
No, it was one of the guys that started coming to Bible study.
Yeah, and then
it happened to him.
Yeah, someone is like, "Don't buy it." Drove to their house and brought them a Bible.
Yeah, he's like, "I got one. Don't buy it. It's too expensive."
That's amazing.
Okay, so you can.
Yeah, we don't have to spend a bunch of time, but I just want to make sure we talk about this side of things too, so it's not just like we talked about the manliness of Christianity and then left it there. So in Matthew chapter 9, verse 36, it says, when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. So, again, you nuanced this very well. These traits are not just for males or females, but it seems like you can look at this kind of deep empathy, emotion, sensitivity towards people and say, you know what, just like you said, like your kid was injured and they wanted their mom. It's not because you're not compassionate, but it's because they see the mom as being a more whole picture of compassion and empathy and things of that sort.
You know, one of the things that really bugs me about, we'll get to there, but here's what bugs me about like ultra feminist leftists is they try to remove that sort of stuff from women.
Yeah.
My wife has given birth 4 times. Okay. My wife has nurtured and cared and fed from her own body children. And there's a connection that my children have to being not only carried in the womb of my wife, but being cared for and fed nutritionally for the first year plus of their lives. That creates a certain kind of bond that they get to have with their mom.
That's right.
That it takes work for me to create a similar kind of bond. There's a reason why my 1-year-old now, when she wakes up in the morning, she immediately wants mom. Yeah. She naturally doesn't come to dad. And I can sit there and go, can't believe she doesn't want to come to me. But I understand why she doesn't want to come to me. And that's so beautiful. And that's so great that happens. And when these things get ignored and kind of spoken against, specifically from the ultra feminist kind of crowd, it's such a disservice to women. It angers me because I'm married to a woman who has sacrificed her body for her children in many, many ways. In ways that I would never be able to. And that's connected to a bond with our children, with her. And I have different kinds of bonds with my children. Right? And so when you balance that together and you work it into each other, then it becomes, again, this very beautiful sort of harmonizing aspect of life. But with that, and going back to Jesus looking with compassion, that's part of the reason, as though they were a sheep without a shepherd, right? That's the passage you read.
Yes.
If you're a Christian whose heart doesn't break for those individuals who don't know Jesus, you might want to step into your prayer closet and say, God, what's going on here? Because I don't have your heart. As someone who's done evangelism for the past 20 plus years, what I do on YouTube is evangelism, by the way. It's like we do apologetics because we want to evangelize. There have been moments in my life where my heart has become very callous towards non-Christians. Right? To the point of it's like, I don't care what happens. And in those moments, God has he's confronted me, let's just say. Said, Arthur, you don't have my heart. Right. And one of the reasons why, one of the things I've learned, I guess, is I usually don't have that kind of a heart when I'm not in prayer for people who don't know Jesus. When I pray for people who don't know Jesus, I become more compassionate towards them.
So important.
Right. And then I also pray regularly. I pray, God, give me your heart. Give me your heart for the lost, because I want to care for the lost. And there's a certain kind of burden I feel that, again, people might say this is a gifting. It's not normal for other people. And that's okay. Right. Because people have other kinds of burdens. You're a worship leader. You view that stuff very differently than I do. You probably feel and think things that I don't. And so that's okay. That's not what I'm necessarily talking about. Yeah. What I'm talking about is this brokenheartedness, this kind of like, wow, like this pity sort of, not in the like I'm a better place pity, but like you're really missing out. You can have this thing that God wants for you and has for you, and not repenting and coming to him, you're really missing out. Right? And I think that's the heart Jesus has when he looks over the people and says, they're like sheep without a shepherd. I mean, have you seen sheep without shepherds? Like they're a mess. They could go fall off cliffs and die. So they need someone to guide them and care for them. If a sheep gets hurt in the wild, just breaks a leg, it's going to die. It's either going to be eaten or it's just going to die.
That's right.
Where when you have a shepherd, then you have the caring, tender care of, wow, you know, the picture we see, the painting we see quite often is Jesus walking with a sheep around on his shoulders. Well, there's a broken leg there, and that needs to be mended, and he's going to carry that for as long as necessary until the sheep is fully recovered so it can be on its own. And yeah, then it's not this feminine, masculine kind of weird dynamic. Maybe it's a false dynamic that's created or whatever like that. That could also be the case. But it's that we need to, the way I look at it is we need to be caring and compassionate and loving in all the situations that require it to be. And we need to be maybe aggressive, forthright, kind of to-your-face comments when we need to be. Like rebuke and correct and encourage and so on and so forth.
That's right.
Again, some of those things are not necessarily mutually exclusive as well. But when I think about feminine, for example, I do think about nurturing. I think women are naturally more nurturing than men.
Yeah.
People can give me all sorts of arguments. If I were to put them into categories and just create like a general understanding of male and female, a majority of females will be more nurturing in a given situation. If when your kid falls, you're quick to rush, right? Like Tom, I'm sure you got little kids. And maybe if there's close people, if their kid falls, you're probably close to rush.
Yeah.
But I bet you anything, if it's like a stranger kid that falls, you won't react. But I'm pretty sure your wife will. And there's a good question to ask as to why that's the case. I mean, you just sit, like when I take my kids to soccer and they're playing and they fall, like it's just hilarious to me when I see all the like moms react.
That's right.
And I'm just like, not because I don't care. I also know my son, and if he's hurt, he's hurt. And I'll know when he's hurt. But it's funny to me. I go, you guys react faster than I do. And that's good. It's really a good thing. I think these things should be celebrated. I think to a great extent, men need to learn how to be more nurturing. And who can we learn that from? We can learn that from women. Yeah. Obviously, because if it's so natural to them. And I think we see this in the person of Jesus. And to be more like Jesus is to have a balanced personality. To be more like Jesus doesn't mean I take on all the character traits of women. No. And it doesn't mean for women to take on all the manly traits, whatever that's like.
That's right.
And there's crossovers obviously there. But it does mean that we learn from one another. It does mean like we understand what godliness looks like in that situation, what compassion actually looks like. Because compassion's not always, that's okay, don't worry about it. That's not compassion.
Yeah.
So we have misconceived, misallocated categories. All of us do. And all of us need to be reformed. This is why I'm such a big fan of spiritual formation. Because spiritual formation does that. It helps me understand, what does boldness look like? What does bravery look like?
Yeah.
What does compassion look like? What does meekness look like? In their proper categories.
And they can also often, even in that, let's say, emotional state, that can often lead to bravery or courage. Another example here I have of Jesus's feet being washed and anointed with expensive oil, like the boldness it takes to run, like get at his feet and do that. That shows devotion, boldness. So the compassionate people, as you just spoke about women and stuff like that, that compassion can also turn them into mama bears. As we talk about, like, who's the bear you don't want to mess with if you're caught in the forest wherever bears live? It's probably the mama bear, because the dad's probably snoozing somewhere waiting for some real battle to happen where he can stand up and defend it. But I mean, having these feminine characteristics, like being compassionate and these sort, they can also lead to bravery. Like being at the tomb of Jesus after he resurrected, and being the first to appear there. So these are, you're right. It's not a masculine only or feminine only traits. But the point of the conversation was to say that the two different sexes are given some very distinct personal characteristics and traits, and it's good to hone in on both of those in the context of a church, and to say, yes, you should be compassionate, you should love people, you should care for the needy, you should have that mama bear sort of personality where you're like caring for those around you and you think about their emotions. But you should also prepare for war. You should also have a mindset of, this is a battle. This is a spiritual battle as well. There's going to be things thrown your way that's going to, require you to be tough and not to be, not to cower in every situation. So I feel like if we do a balanced job of making that apparent in the church, then when those things mix together, it's not going to be a shock to people. It's not going to be like, a guy's not going to be like, oh, you know what, this church is always talking about being strong and being courageous, and then now they're talking about being a compassionate. I'm not cool with that. It seems like those things just gradually, organically mix with one another and create a person like that one person we all worship, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems that come to, like, for example, one of the things that bothers me is, why is it that we always give the image of a grandmother or a mother praying for their children? Partly because grandmothers and mothers do that, and they consistently do that. So how are guys failing in this? How are fathers and grandfathers failing in not doing that? Because I think that's a part of being a man and a leader in your home.
Yeah.
And then not losing the kind of, this conversation always comes down to like a nature versus nurture sort of thing. It's like, oh, guys are like that or women are like that because of nurture. Yeah, maybe. But there are definitely things that's nature.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. You just can't run away from this. And again, the ultra fringe folks are going to say, no, it's all nurture. So we can nurture a guy to be exactly like a woman. And my response is, cool, let's do a test and send you to an island and see if you can do that.
That's right.
Right. You know, it's sort of like when they try to do this stuff with animals. Like you've seen this, right?
Yeah.
Where they're like cage animals and they're nurtured them, and then it ends up being the animal actually acts like an animal. And like the other day I saw a video that I'm not sure whether I should have seen, but it's essentially like some country in Eastern Europe, and they're with a lion.
Yeah.
And the guy and the lion bites the guy's neck.
Mm.
And the other guy comes like smacks it and it like, let's go. And then the dude gets up and he's walking away and you see like 4 or 5 holes in his neck. And it's like, what did you expect?
Yeah.
That's a dangerous, dangerous animal.
Exactly.
That can kill you in a second. Now you've domesticated it to a certain extent. And some animals get domesticated a lot better than others. But generally speaking, the nature of the animal is going to take over.
Yeah.
Your chihuahua will die out, right? If we just like don't care for them. They'll get eaten up by like large cats, not even like other dogs. And so one of the things that happens is there is this base, I would say, this base of what we have by nature. There's a base of what we have by nature as humans, meaning that we're all made in the image of God. So that's definitely there. But there's also a base there when it comes to what we have as men and women. Remember that none of the animals, however you understand the story, but none of the animals are fit for Adam. And then from him is made woman that sort of completes him, is best for him. And then we can talk about marriage in that situation, but I think that's also a societal sort of thing. You need men and women in society for it to be a good functioning society.
Yeah.
Right. And so, Arthur, should we domesticate men? We should domesticate men and women. There's no question about that. Everybody needs to be domesticated. Everybody needs to the nurture aspect is what I'm talking about. But we also realize, Tom, this just came to me. We can over-nurture. So on both ways. So if you just have a dad who's just like replicating himself in his children, that child is going to be ill-balanced. Right? Whether that child is a male or a female.
Yeah.
And if you have a mom doing that, the same thing will happen. That there'll be a lack of balance in the person in the nurturing aspect.
That's right.
And then maybe you'll get confusion coming in there. Maybe you'll get like this rebellion of their nature. Suppose they're like being taught to be overly sensitive and then they become like complete jerks. Right? Versus the opposite where it's like, don't be sensitive at all. And they're like, wait, hang on, something's off here. Like I need to be more sensitive.
Yeah.
I remember telling one of my professors who was a really sensitive guy, this is one of the situations in my life where I've been humbled in a conversation and like apologized immediately. This gentleman taught a class and he was, I want to say he was in his 70s at the time. And I think it was me and another guy in the class, and then the rest of the class, like about 8-9 more students, were all females. And I just felt like the class was too emotional. And he was a bit emotional, the teacher himself. So I told him, I spoke to him after class and I said, look, I'm feeling very uneasy here because every conversation ends up being some emotional conversation. I feel like there's things that I want to say and I'm afraid to say it because it's going to come off very offensive and rude to everyone, including the professor. So I had this private conversation with him. And he said, Art, I completely understand you, man. He said, but let me tell you something about me. And then he told me about his past. He's like, I used to be this kind of an individual. And he was not an emotional individual. And he said, so maybe one of the things that's happened to me is I've counterbalanced that a bit too much. And that kind of comes out. He says, but I don't really want to end up where I was, like growing up. And I was like, wow, man, like I mischaracterize and judge this guy really quickly. Just thought he's always been kind of an emotional sort of dude, but he was like reacting.
Yeah.
And there's more to the story and stuff like that. But I think that could definitely be the case where you get these reactions on either side. Best thing we can do is the most balanced sort of thing. But again, I don't want to eliminate the nature. Definitely there's something about it that comes with like being biologically male and biologically female. We can talk about physiology here quite a bit and the science of it. And there is a physiology there. Definitely there's a physiology. And this conversation leads into men and women's sports and all that stuff. But there's a reason we're having those conversations, because these things are the case. So, would you say that you were being brave in talking to my professor? Yeah, I guess so. Yes, I was being a very brave man.
Yeah, I mean, we see the results of what happens in society where the nature of men and women are ignored. There's this Netflix documentary I recommend everyone watching, but it kind of annoys you as a guy where it seems like they're, well, it's kind of true, because it's like once you domesticate this animal, they don't know where to put their rage. Being the male, it's kind of like the pit bull. We've done such a terrible job of domesticating the pit bull.
Yeah.
It's like
I'm not a dog person, so you know a lot more about dogs.
Yeah, it's like the one dog that should be illegal. Put a 1 in the chat if you think a pit bull should not be legal to own. It's tough no matter what you do with these dogs, and they say it's not the owner, it's not the dog, it's the owner. It's the way it just seems like it's constantly pit bulls that are like killing children and attacking people. But there are certain aspects of being a male that if you try to, as you said, the ultra left, radical left does this, you can contain it, like you can push them to the side and kind of push masculinity away and feminize the culture, but the backlash is going to be really, really bad.
Yeah.
And that's what you're seeing in today's culture. I don't like some of the people on the right that are kind of growing in their audience and their influence, but it's because you're talking to because they're talking to a bunch of men that have been pushed to the corner.
They're reacting.
And unfortunately, it's like, yeah, you want to do that, feminist, like liberals, fine, do it, but the result is going to be much worse, because they're going to come out much, and if you overcorrect one way, what happens historically, it overcorrects back the other way. So then you're going to get a bunch of men that are like, yeah, women suck, oh, women can't do
and that's
anything.
my problem, because I'm seeing that in the Christian kind of space now, like especially online, where you're getting like just rash personalities who say they're Christian, who say they're conservative, but the stuff they're saying and the way they're talking, it doesn't have the compassionate nature of the love of God.
That's right.
And then when you call them out on it, what's their response? Oh, you're being a pansy or this and that. It's like, no. Look at the Bible. Read the Bible.
Yeah.
Trust me, it is easy for me to be an arrogant, in-your-face, aggressive guy.
Yes.
That is...
in your nature.
That's the base for me. For Arthur, that's base.
Yes.
Okay? So it takes a lot of work for me to be like, take a step down, think, process, see what's going on, consider the needs of other people before your own, and all these things. Because, look, it's not just that, like, the culture I was growing up in. I grew up in a home with 4 boys, like 3 other boys. And I can be aggressive. I can run over individuals and not think about them. And so this transformation that happens, Christ working in our lives, is extremely important, especially when somebody says they are a Christian. When Andrew Tate says something, I just say he's a dude. He's being a guy that's wrong in all sorts of ways. But if he says he's a Christian and he does that, and I've made videos on this because when he did say he was a Christian and did that stuff, I called him out and I said, this is inconsistent with what the Bible teaches. This is inconsistent with biblical Christianity.
Yeah.
And so if he says he's a Muslim and does that, I go, okay, that's pretty consistent with Islam, right? My issue is when Christians, people who claim to be Christians, are doing that. Being rash on that kind of a level, I think we should call them out.
It's funny, Ivan. You said the name of the exact person that I was thinking about while saying this stuff. Yeah, that's exactly who I was thinking. It actually wasn't Andrew Tate, but yeah, you're right. It's people that seem to care a little more theologically about their faith. It's not even people that say I'm Christians and men should be tough, but it's people that seem to have sort of a little bit of authority on speaking about religion and Christianity, and then like just make us look so terrible. And it's funny because I'm like, I hang out with Art, we have friends and stuff like that, and Arthur's brother,
we have friends.
Yeah, we were together yesterday. I mean, you think if somebody was hanging out with us last night and eating and fellowshipping with us last night would come to the conclusion that these are like feminine Christian men? And it still doesn't take.
I don't know. Ask your wife. She was commenting.
She was like
regularly
wow.
about like.
She's like, no wonder you never come. You never want to come home, and you always want to hang out with these guys. This is fun. And I was like, yeah, but my point being is, you can be compassionate. It's a lie that people like the person Ivan mentioned. It's a lie to say that if you want to become a better, stronger, conservative Christian man, you have to become this like nasty character, putting women down, speaking negatively about. So no, it's the point of us being here. One of the points of us as Christian men and women being here is to bring our faith into society. To not only to die for Jesus and have that hope to see him, but it's actually to bring benefits to the current society we're in, so that our Christ-likeness would make effective change. And part of that is when people like that rise up and say, no, you need to be a hater of this and hater of women. It's first to say, no, actually, no. I can be a tough man. I can be a macho man. I can be like the person that was with us yesterday. He could snap your neck in a second, but he's going to be compassionate and he's going to be loving and he's going to show those traits of Jesus Christ that we were just talking about, that is gentle and caring and a shepherd.
Yeah, so a challenging thought to this is, and this is going to challenge everyone. Okay, the challenging thought to this is this. Do you think Jesus was the most masculine man to ever live? Now, I think Jesus lived out his masculinity to its perfection. Because the Bible says that he was made without sin. He's fully human. So if you want to talk about like Adam, and so, yeah, I think Jesus lived it out. So here's the challenge there. A lot of guys might say no to that because they have misunderstandings of what it means to be a man. Right. So I view Jesus as the perfect male.
That's right.
To ever live. Now he's also the perfect human to ever live. But there's a reason why Jesus didn't come as a woman. There's actually many reasons for that. Chief amongst them, that our first parent was a male. And the Bible holds him responsible for the sin of humanity. And so we can go into details about theology on that, why that matters and why it's important. Nick Quinn says he was like his brothers and sisters in every way. Yeah, that's the humanity aspect. But there's a base of the maleness of Jesus. Okay. And I don't know we disagree on that, Nick. And so when I look at that, and maybe it's easier for me to connect to that. But a lot of guys, because we've changed Jesus, like, I don't know, like maybe when we think about Jesus, we don't think about the splinters he might have had in his hands. We don't think about, like, when you shook his hand, it would have felt like callous.
Yeah.
He probably had a very strong handshake, because if you do work with your hands for 20 years, let's just say, that's going to develop your hands in a certain way. I was looking at someone the other day, and their hands were just like in this. This is an older gentleman. Their hands were like in this close. Like, I don't think they could have opened up their hands if they wanted to, like that. Like it was just close, but it was like you could tell this guy had done work with his hands his entire life. And so those are things when I think about Jesus and the connections I make to, my personal life or the lives of others and stuff like that. It calls everyone to repentance. Now, I'll say this probably till the day I die. Like, the person of Jesus calls everyone to repentance in any situation. You're a really religious person, he calls you to repentance because you're probably don't have the compassion that God wants you to have towards people who aren't as religious, and you probably have an issue looking down on people who aren't like you. We all fall victim to that. You're too masculine, too aggressive, he's going to call you to repentance. You're not compassionate enough, he's going to call you to repentance. You're way too compassionate, he's going to call you to repentance. It's all going to be called to God's intention for humanity and human flourishing. And you need all of it for human flourishing. Hands the size of baseball gloves.
I mean, the people that think Jesus wasn't the most masculine human probably just haven't read the Bible.
Yeah.
And so what happens is your idea of Jesus becomes pictures and posters and like that all like cringe kind of stuff where it's like, oh, he's like bowing down and holding a lamb. And if that's your only image of Jesus, if you don't see the lion, I love that picture with like the lamb in the center and then there's like the background of a lion like roaring over. And so if you don't see that picture of Jesus, or even the picture of how Jesus will return, and it kind of like there's so much about him, like how he's gonna come back, and things of that sort, you understand the full picture of who Jesus was: compassionate, loving, also powerful, masculine, and all that kind of stuff. So it's our responsibility, man, to stand against those people that try to either turn Jesus into this like crazy macho man, like unnecessarily level that he wasn't, and those who try to feminize him and turn him into that guy that was just wandering in the streets like, oh, you need this, you need that, I love you, don't worry about it, I'll come to your house, I'll dine with you all day. It wasn't that either.
Yeah.
I mean, I was teaching the kids about Zacchaeus, and when Jesus went and dined at his house and stuff like that, like the story doesn't just end and then he just left after dining with him. Like, I don't know about the inner workings of the conversations they have, but it seems like Jesus went there and sort of grilled him into, you know what I mean? Like into believing and that kind of stuff. So it's like, even in Jesus's most compassionate moments, there's an angle he's taking there to bring the person to repentance, or, hey, like, I'm doing this, I'm not judging you. Is there anyone else to judge you? No, I'm not judging. But also, don't sin anymore. Yeah. So that, like, those moments are perfect moments where you see his compassion, but also his stern warning. Or when he's speaking to the woman at the well, like, he's showing love and compassion. She's receiving him well, and there seems to be a cool dynamic. And then, like, he can easily turn around the next second and call her, like, you're lying to me about how many husbands you have.
Yeah.
So that's the character of Jesus that I see, I want to become more like, is when there's a moment when the moment is presented to you where you should be compassionate. And then in that, while you're being compassionate, if a moment rises where you can then give a warning, or you can be courageous or brave, or turn that into something, a teachable moment, do that.
It's very interesting that you see this even with, we've spoken a lot about Jesus, but like even with Paul, like he speaks in very tender terms as a father. And like tenderness from fathers is probably something we're missing.
Yeah.
Because it's a different kind of tenderness when you have fatherly tenderness versus motherly tenderness. Like they're both tenderness, but because of where it's coming from, it feels different and looks different. Right? And at times, well, at least with the Galatians, Paul is not so tender with them.
Yeah.
Right. He threatens them, and he says some things about them that even I feel uncomfortable saying. Right. So let the knife slip on them is a very strong image you get. And again, it's not just replicating these sorts of behaviors that I'm interested in. It is embodying these sorts of characters. It's becoming those kinds of people.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen when you're 22. Like, it's just not. Because there's a certain kind of life maturity you probably need and grow into that. But God is sort of interested in that growth process of what we're becoming, right? And so I look at that. So yesterday, I'll just give you an example. When everybody left my house yesterday, I went and I pulled my daughter aside, and I just hugged her and gave her a bunch of kisses. This is my not the baby daughter, the older daughter. And then when she went to bed, I took my son aside, and I did a very similar thing, but in a guy way with him. It required a little roughness in there, and those are bonding moments, and that's tenderness with two different people.
Yeah,
that are two different characters. Let me just say that both my son and daughter are very different from each other, and so their characters are different. So I interact with them differently. And so I think God does that. I think Jesus did that. I think that's the proper way to do it. I think we ought to do it in the church. And if we do all those things, to go back to the question what we've been asking, I guess, from the beginning is Christianity too feminine? I mean, we should, or we need to man up. I mean, I would say to all the women, you need to woman up as well. Like, maybe we're guys, so we're going to say we need to man up. Or if you want to think about it, we need to step up, if that's the way you want to think about that in regards to the title. Is Christianity too feminine? Christianity is not either feminine or masculine. Christianity is both feminine and masculine, because God made them in his image and in his likeness, both male and female. He created them. Both. But quite often in our expression of Christianity, we gravitate towards the extreme. Now, in our context and day and time, I think there's it becomes feminized. And the feminine is like celebrated, right? So it's elevated to just like be very expressive with stuff. Is like celebrated a bit too much, in my opinion. Maybe 20 years from now or 30 years from now, we would be having this conversation and we'd be saying the complete opposite. Hey guys, we've elevated this masculinity too much. Let's bring it back. But at the end of the day, Christianity is what it is. Sometimes we express it incorrectly, and then it becomes unattractive to people. Like, I mean, we could talk about that for a little bit, Tom. We know a lot of people that are like, I won't go to church because like, it's not for me. It's like, well, what does it mean it's not for you? And they're basically reacting to our expression rather than Jesus.
Yeah.
And it's such a disservice, because our job as the church is to point people to Jesus, not get in its way. Like, we're not to get in the way and block people from seeing Jesus and then they see us only. But rather it is to point to Jesus, like be transparent to a certain extent where people see Jesus through you properly. And we miss out on that, man.
Yeah, one example to think about, if you're watching this right now and you're like, where are they getting this from, where Christianity seems more feminine? One example I would give, a small example, but for me it's personal, is because I'm part of the worship team, I'm a worship leader, is that why is it that most churches you go to, and creds to the Orthodox and the Catholics here, because I would remove you from this conversation for a good reason, is more churches you go into, the backup vocals and stuff are all like women. I mean, even the main vocals, like most of the people serving as singers, as the people like you see the guy on the drums, he's definitely a man back there behind his cage and stuff like that, just beating on the cymbals and stuff like that, definitely. Or the guy shredding on the guitar. But why is it that? Art, have you thought about that? Like, why is it that it's not? It's like it's not even an afterthought where it's like, why isn't there male vocalists at most churches I go to? Especially, let's say, in our context here in LA, maybe ethnically or whatever, but even not even within our context of being Armenians, but other churches I've gone to, even if the worship leader is a male, which happens, the backup vocals generally aren't. It's because I think part of it is because, like you said, like one of my other brothers always says, the guys just feel embarrassed standing on stage and singing some of the songs we sing. I think that's true. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine like my brother or your brother. Like, let's say they had some vocal capability.
My brother does, by the way.
Like he does. I wouldn't know that. But like, it's weird to think of them standing on stage and just being like, I was so lonely and you cared for me, and when I was just crying and my cup was empty, and it's like a cringiness to it. And I think the guys feel that. But Art, I think based on your like what you said before of the overcorrection is to push so away from compassion and those kind of emotional feelings. Is it like when something is normal, like some of the songs we sing are normal, and then they go like, no man, singing isn't for me, it's too weird. It's like, no, then you've like overcorrected. There's a lot of good music out there, and it's not all Jesus is my boyfriend music. But I feel like that side of the Christian male has that side of overcorrection is because we feel like church has become so feminized. It's like even when it's not, they're not willing to do certain things in the church because it seems like, oh, that's a female. One other example, Art, is teaching the kids.
Yeah. Like
teaching the children's ministry. Even I think this way. It's like, yeah, man, that's just what the girls do. Like the girls teach the kids. And then we see some of our elders, and I know you've done this before, to say no. You as a male in the church should be having an influence as a teacher for these kids, for them to see that. So it's kind of reshaping that. And I think our church is actively trying to do that, some of that stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of things that need to get corrected along the way.
Yeah, again, it's all like kind of being built up together for the glory of God. You know, you learn, you develop, you grow, you do it properly. And so, man, I'm losing my voice.
I got you water over there.
I drank it all. It's done, bro. You gave me 2 sips of water. I was thirsty.
Your water is done. That's a shame.
We're gonna get a mini fridge in here. Because it's things are changing.
Are you guys enjoying this?
I know. Like,
can we ask people if they're enjoying this? Like, I want to know if you guys are not enjoying this. I don't want to just come here every Monday and everyone's like, oh, this is the worst part of the lives. How are you guys liking this stuff? The conversations, the back and forth. I know Jerome's saying nice things, but Jerome is
always saying nice things.
Jerome is very encouraging. It's weird for me to accept that British people can be like encouraging like that, but he's very super encouraging.
The British encouraged America to become its own country, bro. What are you talking about?
By discouraging them to worship freely.
This is interesting. Yeah, the dynamic. I mean, we're talking about the dynamic and stuff, but even like the conversation today, like, what do you? We would love to get feedback. We really would love to get feedback.
I've enjoyed it. You know, it's tough, Art, and I don't know how much of this you experience, but you can't be a master at every single topic, and you think about these things. And sometimes when you're discussing and things veer, like you can be prepared for one topic, and then they go somewhere else. But I kind of like that, the kind of way you've set up the stream where you can think as you go. Yeah. Like not everything is a prepared video that you're putting out there where people are like, oh, this guy studied on this subject completely and then made a video and put it out there. I like those too, but I like the kind of thinking on your feet, doing things live, figuring it out, getting feedback from people who are watching. Like, that's a good point. That's a bad point.
Yeah.
And the back and forth. I enjoy it, man. I really like doing this.
Yeah. Nick said, I'm enjoying this. I largely agree with the problem, even if I think the solution isn't helpful. And he says, by helpful, I mean workable. Well, look, I will tell you what the workable solution is. having a society in which marriage between a male and a female is encouraged, having churches in which we disciple people properly into what that means. So discipleship means a bunch of stuff in that context. So suppose like I disciple guys, the females in our church disciple girls, but also we're discipling individuals that are getting married in various ways. Here's what responsibility looks like. Here's what parenting looks like. You know, like you and your wife said, your wife made a comment yesterday about like my parenting style. And she was like, well, it's encouraging. You know, it's like when I say no to my kids, I don't feel as guilty. But I view that as being a part of discipleship. We learn from each other. I watched, I would say, pretty decent parents whose children have proven to be, now those kids are adults, whose children have proven to be well-rounded individuals. And I watch them parent, and then the fruit has shown, and I go, oh, maybe I should incorporate some of that stuff into my parenting. And so if we do all those things, then we're going to have individuals that are more holistic, right? Nick, Nick, I think you would agree with this, is that when we have, our children essentially, and the people they marry, they'll have healthier families. I'm pretty certain that I have a healthier family than my parents and my grandparents. I can almost guarantee that. Love my parents, love the way they raised me. Yeah. But overall, the way my family looks, the way we overcome challenges and arguments, and the way we speak to our children, the way we encourage them, all of that is worlds apart. That's because we were discipled at a younger age, like alone from each other, but also growing together. And I would love it for my children to have way healthier families than me. Like, how cool is that? That's the success of your parenting is essentially me, that, right? It's like your kids get married and then their families look like, you're like, wow, man, son, I'm so proud of you. You guys are way more healthy than we were.
That's right.
Now, again, I think it takes a man to admit being wrong like that, to put it bluntly and frankly, to say.
And a woman.
It does. You remember that thing about, like, why do we always have to end prayers with amen? How come we can't say a woman?
And somebody did. Somebody in the Senate actually ended a prayer with amen and a woman. Calm down,
Tell me, it's like, tell me you don't know what you're talking about without telling me you don't know what you're talking about. What's going on? What's Jerome saying?
JR, I love England, man. I'm not trying to be offensive. Honestly, we got our own problems. I actually love it so much. I want to come and visit. I want that to be that location to be one of my next visits. I want to come to your country. And also another interesting statistic in that video I was talking about before that I heard is actually the surge in Christianity is mostly happening in England.
Come on now.
So it seems like there's a huge surge happening, and it's mainly centered in England right now. But only problem is the surge is heavily towards like Catholicism. Weirdly enough.
Interesting. That's not weird.
Yeah.
No, that's not weird, because then you're getting individuals that were brought up in a. You remember in England, Protestantism is Anglicanism.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's a different dynamic there, and why Catholicism would be the closest
I'm
thing.
proving your point from before.
Yeah, I mean it's the closest. It's the closest thing.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
We love the UK.
He said I wasn't being offended. It's all good. Tom, I wouldn't visit England at the moment.
Why? What's going on?
Nick. I'm not sure you will be let out.
Yeah. That's funny.
This is not an actual thing people say, is it?
What?
I love the inseminated person or birthing person.
No, actually, I think the Trump administration had to pass an executive order that says you can't call a woman a birthing person anymore. So there was some level of attempt made to refer to pregnant women as birthing people. It's so funny when you were talking about like you can't change your nature. It's like you it's the videos of like the men holding their babies and trying to breastfeed them, and then people are like, you can't do it. They're like, yeah, but it's just a feeling of like being able to do this. It's like, no, there's no milk in there. You can't feed the child. It doesn't matter how you feel about it. You can want to do that as much as possible. You can try to like normalize it as much as possible, but it's not possible. You can't do that. So stop it.
Wow.
Another thing that's weird.
Proclaiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of God. Sheesh, man.
Another thing that's weird is people like in that camp art, that like the gender thing cult, is they'll say things like gender is fluid and stuff like that. That like there's no such thing as a woman or whatever. But then when they like transition, they start taking on like things that are feminine. We would consider feminine traits.
Yeah,
right?
like they start wearing pink and growing out their hair.
Yeah,
and
it's like
wearing skirts.
Yeah, and it's like, dude, buddy, if there's no actual like thing to being a woman, if you can't define that, then it's really weird that when you transition into one, you start looking like what our understanding of a female.
Oh, it's extremely sexist. The entire thing is very, very sexist.
Yeah.
For example, I won't assume there's a way women talk. Like I don't do that because I know a lot of women who speak differently.
Yeah.
But then you get one of these people that transitions and then they talk like in the most caricature female way that you can possibly talk.
Can you give us a demonstration of
No.
how that would sound? I know you want to do it.
I can't pretend and act that well.
Yeah.
Yeah, not gonna do it. And it's hilarious to me because then I look at it and I'm like, wait, hang on. There's a contradiction here, man.
Yeah.
You can't be doing that. Or, dress is entirely, like clothing is entirely made up by society and stuff. And then you like transition and you wear all women clothing.
Yeah.
Like,
super weird.
Very strange. Very strange.
That's a fun topic. I feel like if I ever wanted to, if I had just one day decided I don't care about anything anymore, like I don't care, I'm just gonna go all out, I would just take that topic and just like give all of my honest thoughts and ideas about what I think about that. But currently I still love my life. I still might work in a corporate job one day. But I think the tide is turning, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't think this is not like some weird proclamation that like everyone's becoming a Christian now. No, but the tide is turning, at least culturally in society, where it's becoming normal again to say like, no, like men should not be playing in women's sport. Biological men should not be playing in women's sport. And it's like, no one's attacking you that strongly. And it's kind of uncomfortable for me because I've been living in that tension for such a long time in my adult life, where now I'm just like, no, man, like disagree with me. I don't
now
know.
you become the other thing.
Like, I don't know what to do.
They should play.
They should.
Bring all the women to the NBA. Let's go.
Ooh, yeah.
It's always interesting to me that you never have it go the other way, like in regards to the sports conversation. Like you don't see a lot of women lining up to join the NBA.
Yeah.
Right. There might be one or two that might possibly be able to like compete at that level, but you get like these lower level athletes trying to go into women's sports, and they are lower level athletes, by the way. I stand by that.
It seems like there might be some advantage in doing so.
Yeah,
biological.
I don't know. Maybe.
No, but I love it. I love the fact, and you know what I love about it most, bro? It's that we didn't cower when it was the height of it. Like I can look at my kids.
Well, we didn't.
Yeah,
but
we
a lot of people did.
Yeah, I meant we as in you and I in this context right now. Like I can look at my kids in the future, and I can say in 2015 to 2022 or whatever it was, 2024, as this conversation was growing and people were cowering and changing their bios and doing all that stuff. Like even in that, we didn't submit to that pressure, and we stood firm and we fought against it. I think conservatives and Christians did a very good job. And I think, by the way, another credit, I think Catholics, Orthodox, Protestants all together did a really good job on this issue culturally. And like we all attacked it from different angles. I've seen so many videos in this last few years of Catholic apologists, Orthodox, Protestant, and all these all kind of attacking the culture together, and in a good way. And it bears fruit now, because as these conversations are now changing and the script is being flipped, we can stand and say, hey, listen. We never submitted to that worldview. We always shared what we thought the correct worldview was. And now that you're looking for a home because you've also realized that was a stupid worldview, you're welcome to this consistency where we've been preaching this for as long as we can remember. As long as we've been in society, we've been preaching this stuff. So it's nice. So creds to all those Christians that got together and kind of fought against this in that context. Stood true.
Amen to that. Okay, I think that's a pretty good place to end today's stream, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
You agree?
I think so.
I think I'm going to give you my word by next Monday. You'll have a new chair.
Because my back, I don't know if you guys have noticed, I'm like going like this because I'm on like a, what do you call it?
It's like a Costco
chair right here.
Yeah. He doesn't have the cool... He doesn't have the cool...
It's my catechizing into the Apologia Center. He's like, why would this man come and get a nice cushion chair with a nice desk? First, he needs to get rid of all the nastiness in his backbones, and I need to put him in a horrible chair like this. Then once he's prepared, I can put him in a nice chair.
No, I think I give you my word that we're going to buy you a new chair. We'll see whether we're going to buy you an exact one of this or another one, and then a table so that it could be sitting in front of you. I'm gonna hang on for a little bit more to see if we can get the same bookshelf. If we can't, then I'll make a decision as to what kind of a bookshelf we're gonna get and put behind you. But we're gonna put a bookshelf, and then I'm gonna put my picture behind you on the bookshelf. So I'm looking,
judging everything I'm saying from here. It's honestly really funny, the dynamic. I wish we could take a picture and show it, because so he's looking at his monitor and
I'm looking at you.
Yeah, but
you're looking at me, but we're not looking at each other straight.
It's really, really, like, this is a legendary setup right here. So there's just a lot of awkward...
So it's funny because we're not actually looking at each other. We're both looking at a screen, looking at each other.
Yeah, that's right.
Tom is finally being treated like a real employee. Well, he's not an employee. Don't get me on that. The IRS will be on my case.
You should see the desk I have right now. You should see.
We'll send him a picture.
You should see my current desk.
Uncle Sam's picture with your face on it. Oh, that'd be cool. Hilarious.
Or maybe a picture of Mr. Pisabi in the back somewhere right here. That'd be really cool.
No, Pisabi hasn't been around. He hasn't called us, nothing. Since you've been regular on the show, Pisabi's kind of disappeared. So we'll see what's going on.
Taking some offense to that.
Maybe. He might be. Well, we'll call that a day. Tom, thank you, man. You've helped me so much in the 2 weeks.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Other than the show, but the lighting and all the stuff we've been doing, it's been working really, really well. And I think it's going to get to go in some really, really cool directions, man.
Cool stuff.
We got some fun ideas we want to share with you guys as this keeps going. Right. And maybe somebody might be sitting there and say, well, what does this have to do with apologetics? The conversation we had. Many things, because it has to do with how Christianity is presented to the world. And we want Christianity to be presented to the world in a balanced, proper, biblical way. But I would say, I would put this in the category of cultural apologetics rather than giving arguments this way or that way. So if you were asking that question, maybe you weren't, but if you were asking that question, I think that's the answer for it. Again, Tom, thank you. Folks, thank you guys for joining us and hanging out with us as we make things better. And hopefully you've enjoyed this. Share it out, share the channel out, subscribe if you're unsubscribed, if you want to jump on Patreon and support us through Patreon. Thank you for all the super chats. Really appreciate it. It goes a long way. And with all that, God bless you. Take care. We'll see you later.